Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Stroll. I'm the CEO of Entasis 360, and I want to welcome you to our, I don't know how many of these we've done, but the nth annual Executive Technology Exchange. I've been to or hosted many of these, and in San Francisco, I have to say, this is amazing. I didn't even know the Exploratorium could do something like this. For the people that aren't here, I figured they saw the Exploratorium and are probably circling the Palace of Fine Arts right now and don't realize that they've moved. So hopefully they'll figure it out at some point and make it down here. I'm especially excited about this one this year because we are in a time of change. Our business is turning 30 years old next year, which in the world of we're what you call a value-added reseller, meaning we sell computer solutions, both the products and the services, and hopefully we do a lot more than that and put the value back in V, so to speak, by becoming a good partner. And I think that there's never been a better time to be what I would call a good partner because we are going through so much change. This is no longer about products and speeds and feeds and what your budget is for servers and storage and network and all that other stuff. That's just a byproduct of what's important these days. What's important is how your businesses, our business as well, is transforming and how we are aligning with you to help you solve the problems that you're dealing with that go far beyond technology. We have made significant investments in the world of digital transformation, which those are the buzzwords of today, and we'll get sick of those in 6 months, and we'll create new buzzwords. But the bottom line is with digital transformation, really what that is utilizing things like creating cloud strategies, DevOps strategies, big data, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and figuring out not how to install it. I don't want to say that's the easy part, it's very complex, but how to make it a meaningful part of your business. These are not new concepts to business as a whole. We call it something different now, and the rate of change that we face as organizations is the real key in this. Once upon a time, we could plan out even our business 3 years at a time and then have to change our business in order to keep up with your changes. Now we have to be able to change our business 6 months at a time, and we only expect that to be able to accelerate. So as a VAR, that means we're creating platforms for providing service to you guys, providing information, providing resources, providing the speakers that we have today that are going to talk about some of these things overall. The second thing, a lot of you know us for our experience in the world of VDI. And we've done a lot of VDI type work for you, but we realize just like all other applications and data center platforms that we need to be able to have cloud conversations with you as a customer. Where are you going with your desktop or your workspaces? Where are your applications going? And like with server and data center type of solutions, it's not just a lift and shift philosophy. Lift and shift philosophies fail time and time again. It is philosophies of understanding users, workflow, applications, and optimization, both from a business and financial standpoint, as well as from a technological standpoint. So hopefully what we have for you today is a group of speakers that will create ideas and discussion and the opportunity for us to come back and talk to you again about what your digital transformation strategy is, talk about some of the workshops and partnership aspects of what we have with you, as well as talk about what your desktop or workspace transformation strategy is, and share some of the things that we're doing around creating, what do you call those, roadmaps. Nothing happens with a forklift. It's a process and a journey that we hope to go with you guys on. So I'm really excited to have you guys here today. And with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. You know, there's this thing while we're talking about all these fancy terms and words and businesses and processes, and it's, you know, by the way, we actually have to secure stuff. I know there's nothing in the news about breaches and problems and all these other things, but from time to time, you know, this is something that we just feel like we should touch on, to the point where we felt that this should be our first keynote speech. We just did this in Southern California a few weeks ago. We followed the same format. And obviously we've had now, which is very unusual in this day and age, 95, Matt, what is it, 22-year relationship with Citrix. And we're very fortunate to have, now I have to put these on and read, Kurt Romer, the Chief Security Strategist for Citrix Systems with us. Kurt leads security, compliance, risk, and privacy strategies for Citrix products. As a member of the Citrix CTO and Strategy Office, he drives ideation, I still got to get that word, innovation and technical direction for products and solutions that advance business productivity while ensuring information governance. An information services veteran with more than 30 years experience, his credentials include CISSP. He also served as commissioner for the U.S. Public Sector Cloud 2 initiative and led efforts to develop the PCI Security Standards Council Virtualization Guidance Information Supplement while serving on the Board of Advisors. You know why I didn't memorize that, right? Most importantly, he's going to talk a little bit about Citrix, but really the world of security and kind of his vision as a whole. We try to make sure we don't go too product deep in these, because to the point, we're all trying to solve problems, and we want to hear the thoughts, experiences, and ideas of everyone. So with that, Kurt. There's your build-up, buddy.
Thanks, Mike. Well, thanks. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Really excited to be here in this beautiful venue and looking forward to an interactive conversation. So if you've got some things to add, some questions to ask, things to interject, just please bring it up. Security is a real important topic because it touches all of us. It's funny, I was sitting there this morning thinking, hey, wait a second, you know, my 401k is out there. That's a pretty good amount of my net worth right now. And based on this Equifax breach, absolutely everybody can go out, get my information, be able to impersonate me, and go and change my account information and transfer everything out of my, I won't tell you who it's with, but out of my 401k. And so I'm actually calling my advisor later on and telling them to freeze the account. Anybody else thinking like this? Yeah, you really need to be. That's the state of security these days. We are unfortunately at risk. And I'm not going to belabor and talk about all the bad things for the next couple hours. Being a security guy, of course, I could do that. We have fun with that. But what I want to do is help all of us think a little bit more about the future of security and what we should be planning for as we look into the future and start thinking about where security is going, where it needs to go, and how to make it a lot more meaningful for all of us. So with that, jump into a couple things. You know, one of the things we want to do is provide a lot of questions to ask. And we should be asking many questions as we engage new services, as we utilize existing services, as we look at how our roles are changing, how our organizations are changing, and most importantly, how our relationships are changing. Who we're working with, who we're interacting with, who we're sharing data with. This is extremely important, and it goes well beyond just what most of us think about in terms of security, right? Which is what? What do we think about? Uh-oh, front row. I'm going to have to pick on somebody in the front row. What do we think about? We think firewalls. We think passwords. See, everybody's eating. I can't pick on you while you're eating. You think, you know, login events, stuff like that. If your security is just your login event, I would argue you've got some real issues, because if you're designing your entire security around restricting access, guess what? People already have access. People within your organization have access, third parties have access, hackers have access too, don't they? So if they've already got access, what should we be focusing on? We should be focusing on protecting usage. I'm not saying throw out access security. It's extremely important, but you can't just rely on that as your sole source of trust. And if you do, you're going to continue to experience a lot of the issues that we've had so far to date. So let's talk about how we can look at this a little bit differently. In terms of some of the topics to discuss, it's important to look at the trends that are facing security, and they're not just technology, you know, next-gen firewalls, next-gen antivirus, all this other next-gen stuff. Very important for the IT department, but security is so much more than that. There's business and socio-economic trends. There is a lot of trends out there that are driving how people are interacting, how they're communicating with each other. There's millennials, lots of other stuff that we have to factor in, because guess what? They change our notion of security and they change how we respond. Anybody think the organization, not your organization of course, but any organization might be getting in the way of us providing for better security? Yeah, it's a big part of it. we really have to revisit. If security right now is just a department and a product and something that somebody else does, yeah, that's where the organization is failing. Your security department should really be the cheerleaders, the people who are out there helping to make sure that you're getting everybody involved, that they're thinking about the right level of security and compliance and privacy that have to be part of everything you do. If the security department instead is this black box that a whole bunch of money and stuff goes into and nothing comes out of other than information for the board, you don't have the right security team right now. You're really going to need to take a look at that further. And we'll talk about that. Mobility, IoT, extremely important, right? What's IoT got to do with security, though? Everything. Everything? Why? I love that answer. Yeah, everything's connected. We have tens of billions going into hundreds of billions of devices that are connected through IoT. What is IoT? Internet of Things, right? But what is it? Don't think about the Internet of Things as these little bands we're wearing on our wrists and the internet-connected refrigerator and things like that. Think of IoT as the bridge between the physical and the cyber world. You really have to be doing that because that's what it is. In fact, IoT is so significant in a lot of sectors, manufacturing, healthcare in particular. It's adding another leg to the three-legged stool of security, which has been confidentiality, integrity, and availability. What's the new leg that's being added? Safety. With IoT being the bridge between the physical and the cyber worlds, autonomous vehicles, things that are decided for us as we walk into rooms, all these other factors combine to really make some big safety issues around IoT, and we've got to be thinking about that. And then also, I work for a vendor. You're not going to hear a Citrix commercial today, but I have to mention the words artificial intelligence and machine learning. It's just something every vendor has to do these days, right? So, but what does that mean? Most of the time when you hear about these, it's vendors saying, oh, we've got this new way of looking at logs and this new way of helping to provide some deeper insights based on our logs. And it's basically logging plus plus to them. AI and ML are so much more than that. Do you know what they are? When somebody says machine learning, what do you say? What is it? What does it do for you? Well, machine learning basically tells you what normal is. It takes a look and learns all the things that are going on, and it lets you know what's normal and what the outliers are, what might be abnormal. Remember, abnormal is not always bad. It might be opportunity. It might be optimization, some things you need to know. But that's what machine learning is all about, and it's very useful technology. What about artificial intelligence? Automation, yep, doing things for you. But it's also helping you answer those questions and ask those questions that you never even thought of. If your artificial intelligence system is just doing things a little better than you are today, go back and fine-tune it a little bit more. It should be giving you insights into your business that you didn't have, stuff you never thought about. And where's the value for AI? As you look at people connecting up to applications and desktops and transferring information to other people inside and outside the organization, using apps, using data, creating new work products, where's the value in AI? Is it just in IT? Just in IT security? No, the value's to the business. And that's the other big thing with these technologies. These are not IT technologies, and if they're being implemented as such, there's so much more that can be done. There's also a real security and privacy issue associated with this. Right now, if you've got artificial intelligence going through and telling somebody within the organization, hey, here's some really cool stuff that we just learned that nobody else in the company knows about, how we're working with our customers, suppliers, how people affect price elasticity, stuff that the organization would just be salivating to get their hands on. Well, right now, if that's just being handled by an IT intern or fairly low-level admin, guess what? They have more power right now than your CEO and board of directors. That's a big deal. So when you roll out AI and ML, You have to remember these technologies are giving new insights into the business. Think very clearly about who should be getting that information, how that can be compartmentalized, and make sure that the value is not just within IT. So that's kind of what we can talk about today. Anything else that you came here to hear? All right. Should be kind of fun. Yes? The sounds are echoing everywhere up here, so sorry.
So I know we've been talking a lot about machine learning and AI, and I mean, it's compelling, it makes a lot of sense. How far are we from really seeing like machine learning and AI in the data center?
Okay. Question was, so a lot of people have been talking about machine learning and AI. How far are we seeing from this in the data center? We're seeing it today. There are several vendors that have technologies implemented that machine learning is going through and learning the network, and they're learning how things are shared within the network. And actually, there were machine learning algorithms 5-6 years ago that were predicting how the carriers were routing traffic through their networks. And the paths that they would take for optimization, for the best performance and the best cost, balancing those out, were a path that no human engineer would ever pick. It seemed so illogical, it was not even funny. But it was the right path. It was the right path, and it could dynamically adjust it. And so machine learning figured that out, and then artificial intelligence helps to predict that over time. And within Citrix, we've been doing that as well. We've had a NetScaler MOS, the management and analytics system, part of NetScaler, has been in place for a couple years now, going through and helping to provide insights into what's going on from all the data that passes through the NetScaler. Once again, as you authenticate into your environment, you put in your multi-factor authentication, your tokens, your passwords, your identity. And as you connect up to various applications, internally and externally, that goes through a NetScaler, including some of the biggest web properties out there in the world. All of that data can be utilized to help optimize how people are communicating. And we've been using that within Citrix, and I welcome you to look at that a little further. We've even expanded on that to provide the Citrix Analytics service that's going to be a component across all of our products, so that as you connect through to various applications, data, services, you're collaborating, you can go back through and, as a Citrix customer, be able to understand how your organization is working, where things are very effective, where you might have a group that's struggling a little bit. And from a security and risk management perspective, you can even look at the performance of individuals or teams. And so you could go down and see that there's one vice president that's accepting a certain amount of risk every single quarter at the last month of the quarter because he procrastinated. And you can give them a little additional remedial training. Or somebody who's really struggling with a certain application, and you can see that it's taking he or she 3 times longer than anybody else in the organization. Maybe they need a little training. Once again, some great information that will help the business and help individuals, but it can also bring up some privacy implications. So, yeah, great question. Yes?
When do you think we'll start seeing mainstream adoption of blockchains? To add to your buzzword.
Yeah, buzzword. We're working on buzzword bingo, by the way. Turn over your... So blockchain adoption. Blockchain adoption's out there right now. It's being used by a lot of financial services organizations to help with the distributed ledger problem. But if you think as well about blockchain adoption, there's a distributed ledger problem with things like firewall rules and IDS, IPS rules. And organizations that are sharing data with each other would like to. So the Financial Services ISAC has been together for years, and they share data between the different banks and financial institutions, but it's a very tight-knit group. The government's called for the rest of us to share data a little bit more, but oftentimes the data you're sharing needs to be anonymized, and you want people to be able to use it, but you don't want them to modify it or see the source. Blockchain can help with that, and so I personally see some very wide blockchain adoption within the next 3 years. Oh, good question. A lot of different things that we're working with today, a lot of different situations we're working in. One of the biggest issues, though, is that the rate of change is just something that people are having a hard time keeping up with. the dynamic nature of security, the changing threat landscape, all of the vulnerabilities that we need to be aware of. And could you pick up the device in your pocket right now and tell me what vulnerabilities you have on there and whether you're concerned about having your bank account on that device right now or not? I'm sure there are a couple people that can. For the rest of us, that can be a struggle. I mean, I've been up here for 10 minutes now. I can't tell you anymore because things have changed in the last 10 minutes. It really is that dynamic. When's the last time that you got a notification from your carrier or from your phone supplier that said, hey, you really need to update. We've got a security issue and we want to make sure you're taken care of, or your app vendors or anything? Or does this all just silently happen in the background? Sometimes. And sometimes not, because if you've got a phone that you haven't updated in a couple of years, guess what? Pretty much anybody can get on it these days through any network you connect to, and that's kind of scary. If they're targeting you, you've got a problem. We got to do better than this. A lot of other stuff. I'll leave this for us to go through later, but we really have to take a look at how changes are happening and how this digital disruption is affecting us. I've touched on a lot of these already, but the business model one is also very big because many traditional business models are completely being disrupted by mobility, cloud, millennials, and very soon with IoT and things like blockchain. You have to constantly be thinking, if you've got a business that's been running really, really well, how could somebody disrupt that? What would they need to do? If somebody were to come in with absolutely none of the legacy debt and baggage that you have that you're already supporting, how would they be able to do it better? You have to be thinking about that all the time, especially in terms of things like security. And when we take a look at security, we've got three different groups that we're typically thinking about. First one being users. And I'm saying from an organizational view, the theme is more, more, more. You can't see all of that from over there because it's being blocked. What do users want more of? Access. More access. Yep. What else? They want more autonomy, right? They want more freedom of choice. They want more apps. We see that all the time. What else do they want more of? More freedom. More freedom. That's the big one. Yep. What about IT? What does IT want more of? Control. Absolutely. That's the big one. What else? Trouble tickets. Yeah. Uh-oh. Somebody, yeah, we'll let that one go. What else? Structure. More technology. IT has got some very ingrained practices that they're basically perpetuating. And one of the things that we've got to think about is if you're part of an IT organization and you're looking for this from a more perspective, guess what? Somebody can come by and do it for less. The worst one, though, is the CSO. Your chief security officer or chief information security officer, what do they want more of? It's an easy one. Control. Yep. Visibility. And what are we always hearing? Need more money, need more people, right? If your answer to everything as a CSO is more money and more people, that's also a huge problem. We got to find a way to do this better with less money and less people. Artificial intelligence is going to help, but that reign of control is coming to a very quick end. In fact, one of the things that I like to show is this little slide. I never take pictures of slides when I'm at conferences. This one I did. This one struck me. This is from the Gartner IT Security and Risk Management Conference in Sydney, Australia last month that I presented at. I'll read it for those in the back. By 2022, in 60% of large enterprises, business units will select their desired level of cost and risk. Let that sink in for a second. Do you agree with that? Let's say they're even off by half. Wow. Does this change how we do IT? Quite a bit. Is this the way it kind of should have been in the first place? Yeah. So I've been doing this for a while, and when I started, it wasn't IT, it was information services. That made a lot more sense. And then we focused way too much on technology for several decades. I would beg all of us to go back and have more of an information services mentality from here on forward. Stop focusing so much on the technology and start focusing on what we're delivering. This is going to happen, and it's already been happening as people get out and buy their own mobile devices, mobile applications, cloud applications, and business units completely bypass IT in total. We can still be relevant, we can still have a lot of things that help these business units, but we have to keep this one in mind. And it's not just Gartner, there's a lot of other studies out there. Ponyman basically says a new IT security framework is needed. So what is that? I'm going to run through this really quick. From our perspective, the strategy is, number one, if you can virtualize access to your apps and data, do that. For any sensitive applications and data, if you're not shipping that data down to the endpoint, if you're not putting that data across the network, if you're not installing applications on every endpoint, what does that do to your security? Makes it much more effective. You know where your data has been distributed to. You've got control over the applications, their updates, their patches, and you can go back and from a governance or compliance perspective, answer all the questions on who's used the apps, how they've been authenticated. It's why most of the world utilizes virtualization, app and desktop virtualization, for access to things like PCI-based applications and HIPAA-based applications for healthcare. It's also a great way of delivering a lot of cloud-based applications. Believe that? Why? What about something like Office 365? Anybody use that? Know somebody who uses that? What can people do when they go home and they're using Outlook on Office 365 from their home PC or even a work PC when they go home? Export their mailbox, access everything. They can do anything they want, right? They have no control. They're outside of your network. They're outside of your controls. What would you like to be able to do? Well, what if you published Office 365, you publish that in a browser, and you lock that down with Citrix XenApp or XenDesktop, or another virtualization technology. I just happen to be partial to Citrix. You can control the ability to cut, copy, paste, save, print, or otherwise exfiltrate data on a per-app basis. You can determine what apps work with each other. If somebody launches something like Facebook or pulls up their personal information, that Office app or any of your sensitive company data can automatically be suspended in the background. And you can even control whether they can save down to USB keys or not, or just encrypted USB keys that are under organizational control. You can do that on a per-app basis. So if you need that level of control, even for web and cloud and SaaS-based apps, publish your browsers. Big, big hint. If you haven't thought about that before, we've got a paper that we've developed with this, and some really interesting integration with antivirus so that you can take a look at links that are coming in through email that people aren't supposed to click on. But even if they click on them, they open up in a one-time use browser, not connected to anything, not your registry, not your file system, not your endpoint, can silently go away, or you can have antivirus go through and say, here's exactly what happened in the background, and give you a whole bunch of forensic information from within memory, not from OS APIs like normal antivirus, but from within memory on the techniques that are being used. Want more info? Talk to me about that later. Secondly, there are times where people need to use offline data, and they absolutely have to have data carried with them. People who are working in emergency medical situations, healthcare, people who are linemen, a lot of the people who are fighting the fires here in California, they've got to have that data offline. You've got to make sure that that's protected in an enclave, especially if people are taking pictures of situations that they want to be able to send back, but it's very sensitive data. Have that automatically go into an enterprise managed enclave just because somebody's at work. It automatically handles it for them. And all of the data is protected, and it's separated from the data on their personal device if they're bringing in their own device. And by the way, all the other controls that I talked about in terms of copy, paste, et cetera, same thing. You can apply all of those to the containers. All of these capabilities need to be situational, though, so that when you're at work, certain things happen the way that they should when you're at work. When you're at home, they happen the way they should be when you're at home. And when you're traveling, especially internationally, maybe certain data is not available on your device. Maybe you just have virtual access. Maybe it automatically preloads some documents for you to look at on the airplane and updates things that you otherwise would have had to have gone and searched for. And it does it automatically. You can build all of that into policy. And it's more than policy, though. It's basically workflows. You have to think about how people are working throughout their days, all the different things that they do to collaborate and produce a work product, and build that into workflows along with security that are automatically controlled for the user. We leave way too much up to user action or inaction today. We can do better, and definitely have some ways to do that. And then I think I've talked enough about analytics and insights, but there's much more to that story. A lot of different initiatives that people are facing. I'll skip through this here pretty quickly. How many folks are familiar with the NIST cybersecurity framework? Couple? Good. We said a new framework is necessary to help protect today. This might look somewhat familiar, but I want to run through a couple of things here. First of all, NIST went through and identified these core functions: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. And they said that these are performed concurrently and continuously, not just at login, to form an operational culture, not just IT's responsibility, and addresses a dynamic cybersecurity risk. Once again, constantly changing. So applying this framework lets you get your hands around a few things. It's kind of interesting, though, when you look at that operational culture. How many people today, if you walked into a business unit and you said, what's your plan for respond and recover within the business unit? What do you think they'd say? We'll go talk to IT, right? That's IT's problem. Is it? Should it be? Remember, 60% of large enterprises moving these decisions. Business units should be responsible for respond and recovery. They're the ones who own the data. They're the ones who have the responsibility for it. They're the ones who know the data classification. They're closest to it. So we've got to partner with them more. But we also need to make sure that they're doing things the right way. Organizations have been hit by ransomware. I won't ask you to raise your hands because some people are a little sensitive to that. But we've all seen it in some way, shape, or form. How many business units just responded to ransomware by themselves? Either went out, paid the fine because it was low, or they said, hey, wait, I've got a backup of this from yesterday. I can just bring the data back. That's good, right? Right? You can tell that there's more to this. Anybody who's responded to ransomware by just restoring the data is kind of missing the point. Yep, you got your data back, fantastic. Or you paid the fine, you got your data back. But what else happened? That ransomware attack was not just there to encrypt your data. That attacked your endpoint, that attacked your network, that attacked your servers. That could have installed a secondary infection, infecting the operating system, other applications, your firmware. We've seen this. It might be silently waiting for command and control out into the future to do something else. So just restoring the data, did you take the attack and malware off your system? No, you didn't. Do the business units know this, or do they think they're really great because they restored their data? Yeah, you need to help them with this. The other thing is if you've got roots of trust associated with any of these, things like certificates, if your system got hacked, don't trust any of your roots of trust anymore. Completely reissue them. If you had servers and domain controllers that had certs on them, they have to be reissued. You've all done that, right? If you haven't, another helpful hint. Okay, I've gone through and for each of these put together some things to think about from the perspective of each one of the areas of the cybersecurity framework. In the interest of time, we're not going to run through this, but I'll make sure you have a copy of the presentations so that you can run through and take a look at these. Really, from an identify perspective, though, you've got a couple of cool things you can do, and artificial intelligence and machine learning will go through and help you identify the organizational use of your data, the roles that are using it, the relationships, how people are communicating it. Use that to help identify. In terms of protecting, you've got to make sure that you're helping to move the responsibility for defining protection closer to the business so that you're correlating the value of protection with the value of the assets. In terms of detecting, here's kind of a fun one. If you're in security, you've been part of the security team. What do you think about users? Yeah, yeah. Users are idiots. They're the biggest problem. They're the cause of all our security problems. We've all heard this before. Hopefully none of us have ever said that. But what if, because all your users and all their endpoints are out there basically as beacons, identifying what's going on, what if you use them to help crowdsource security? Identifying threats, identifying vulnerabilities, things that are unique, and actually using users and automating this to crowdsource a better source of security response and detection. From a respond perspective, make sure that you're tailoring your response, you're learning from everything. AI and ML will definitely help there. And from a recovering perspective, know that business resumption and disaster recovery are critically important functions. A lot of organizations are moving those to the cloud these days and saving a ton of money. If you're not doing that, talk to me later about that. I'll leave you with a couple of key questions. First of all, what's your cloud endpoint strategy? You've got people who are going directly to the cloud for their applications today. If you haven't thought about publishing your browser through XenApp for your cloud-based apps and stratifying those, you might want to think about that. Gives you the ability to have strong authentication, logging. You can even do mutual authentication down to the endpoint using NetScaler so that nobody can hit your app unless they've got the cert installed on their endpoint. You can bump up your cloud security quite a bit. Also, how do you make sure that the most sensitive data stays within defined project teams? So if you've got a top secret M&A project that you're working on with people within your company as well as external lawyers and partners, how do you make sure all the documents and all the work products are encrypted and they're only viewable by the people on that project team? Do you have projects that are that sensitive? If you do, you can use ShareFile to do this today. And you can add digital signatures automatically into this as well as watermarking so that you can make sure that you've identified who is working on this and keep people from utilizing it using DLP and information rights management technologies to help protect the data. Work situations. It's not just about logging in on your enterprise PC anymore. Think about all the different ways that people work, all the personas they need to express, whether it's a regular employee, whether it's as an administrator, as a supervisor. Keep all of those separated so that you don't have somebody logging in all at once and exposing all the risk in terms of their access credentials and personas. And think about how they work from home, internationally, from a competitor's office, from an airport, et cetera. And utilize what I like to call the 5 W's of access to design your policy on this. It's who, what, when, where, and why. Every single access request, every single transaction needs to factor in who, what, when, where, and why so that you can help to verify whether that should be granted or denied. And then IoT. We talked about this, the bridge between the physical and cyber worlds. Make sure you're factoring in safety. Prepare for IoT today. It is going to change our lives. And then the big one. Whether you agree with this or not, have these conversations with your management, with your teams, with your business units. IT has been changing. It's going to change even more. How can you help to facilitate the security decisions being moved to the right place within the organization? Every organization has a different right place, which is why you need to have those conversations. But start that today. With that, I'll leave you with a few key takeaways. Hopefully lunch is great. I'll be trying it here in a second. And thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Am I on? Am I on? Am I on? Am I on? Can you hear me? I can broadcast. Okay, cool. Before I introduce our next speaker, putting these things together isn't just something that we do. It requires a community to do it. And in our community, we have a lot of partners who believe in this kind of platform for sharing information and having an interactive event. And they don't go cheap, they go big because they know the importance of getting this time with you. And so I'd just like to take a second to recognize our sponsors, Veeam, Zentors, NetApp, Ivanti, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Citrix, and our platinum sponsor, Cisco. So thank you guys very much for today. Oh, God. They were on my head the whole time, and now they're gone. Okay. Before I introduce our next speaker, I talked earlier about how we have to be able to move faster as a VAR in order to produce services and solutions that are in line with key initiatives for you guys. And I talked about the fact that we're now in this kind of 6-month time frame, and it's even accelerating even further. So how, when you're swimming in one swim lane, let's say data center virtualization and desktop virtualization, do you pivot to cloud or digital transformation or desktop workspaces or what have you? In some cases, we have the internal capacity to build it ourselves. In other cases, we have to figure out how we can take care of these long-term relationships that we've had with you guys and bring you the best of breed people, products, and technology and solutions overall. And so there's a new model that is evolving in the VAR market space that is being led by our next speaker, Anoj, who I'll introduce in just a moment, that involves people that have been doing this as expert professionals, like you might know us in desktop and data center virtualization for years and years. They're well-known industry people. They bring the level of expertise you expect from us every single day. And what they do is they join our organization, not as an acquisition, but as a practice representing our organization as a whole, up until the point where then we're ready to just kind of go with it as we go forward. So how do we do something day one that we haven't done before and do it to the level that you have expected us to bring other types of solutions to you before? So with that, I'd like to introduce Anoj Willi. He's the CEO and co-founder of Zentors, a next-generation consulting and systems integrator specializing in digital business transformation. Before founding Zentors, Anoj has excelled for over 15 years as a strategist and advisor for an array of companies ranging from Fortune 100s to startups. He developed and operated cloud and high-performance computing systems for Patrick Soon-Shiong, a medical researcher and renowned entrepreneur focused on data-driven medicine and ranked by Forbes as the wealthiest American in healthcare. And he's done a lot of other things, so it's a very modest introduction. And I would embarrass him because he's next and he loves when I do that. And, you know, he's the best dressed guy in the room. No offense to anybody else. So, Anoj, my friend.
All right, thank you, Mike. All right. Hope everyone's enjoying their steak. I'm on this vegetarian kick with my wife right now, so I think I'm getting a bigger salad later. I wish you could block documentaries on Netflix, so I'm just going to leave it on that. But change is hard, right? And I'm going through that right now, trying to be a vegetarian for just 1 month. But let me ask you guys a question, just on a personal note. Have any of you ever seen a ghost before? Nobody. Wow, that's great, because I don't believe in ghosts. Up until I bought this house in Long Beach. It was this 1920s house. I lived in it for a while. And one night, you know, late at night, I'm doing my work, just where I do my best work, or maybe the only time I do my work, actually. And I'm sitting there, I'm working on a presentation to do next week, or the next day. And it's 11 at night, and my daughter, who was 2 years old at the time, she walks in, and she says, "There's a man in my room," which is really freaky, because my daughter usually just talks about, you know, unicorns and ice cream, things that 2-year-olds talk about. So, you know, we went and checked it out, and she was very descriptive. She's like, you know, he's got dark hair and a purple shirt and everything. So we went and, you know, assured her, hey, nobody's in your room, go back to bed. Well, the second time, you know, it was a little freaky. By the third time she did that, and I was like, hey, listen, just go to bed, it's fine. My wife called our neighbor who said, oh, good thing you called me. There is a ghost in this neighborhood. I just chased it up from our house yesterday. It's probably over there. I'm going to come right over, which is the last thing I needed, right? So this lady comes over, and, you know, I don't know what they do. They go and have a seance or whatever. Ghost is gone. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning right now. I'm still trying to get this thing done. Our neighbor lady comes over and she's like, hey, are you working on an IT presentation? You know, I used to be in IT. Maybe I can help you. And I said, no, lady, you just need to go home right now, right? So I can work on this. And she said, listen, let me give you a piece of advice. If this ghost comes back, just all you need to do is stand in the middle of your living room and in a commanding voice, tell it to leave you and your family alone. And I was like, all right, thanks for your spell. I will try that later, thank you. So she goes home, I sit down to work on this thing, and I swear to you, I don't believe in ghosts, but something just went by my head. I was so scared, I'll be honest with you, I almost dropped a dookie in my pants. Like, this is a real moment for me, okay? Next thing I know, I was in the middle of my living room doing one of these things, this is like probably not in a commanding voice, and just telling this ghost to go away. Why do I tell you this story, this ridiculous story? It's because 10 years ago, I've been doing this digital consulting thing for a long time. And we used to meet with the CEOs of Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 500 companies. We used to meet with the CEOs of VARs. We did consulting and still do for folks like Cisco and Microsoft. And you would meet a lot of folks when you would tell them about things like, hey, you're probably not going to be selling as much hardware in a while. Cloud is coming, digital transformation is coming. They'd be like, yeah, kid, that's okay. Go back. They would do basically what I did to my daughter and my wife and sort of blow it off. And a lot of folks now when we meet, they're in this situation where they're just like, no, okay, this thing was real, right? And what's happening to us right now is this. It's the rate of change is exponential. In fact, you're probably not even paying attention to me right now because you're looking at this. Oh, what happened there? You're looking at this, and this is what our 2-million-year-old brain does. It gets confused by blinky lights. And the reason I say this is because decisions are coming at us faster than ever before, and they're more complex. How many of you have kids? Here. All right. How many of you are concerned that your kids spend too much time in front of a screen? All right. How many of you take your phones to bed with you at night? Yeah, that's a little hypocritical, right? We're connected to a computer, and if you lose it or it loses power, we kind of freak out for a while. We're like, where's my phone, right? And now, talking about decisions, you could have an extra bottle of wine, get on across 3 social media apps, and completely destroy your career in a night before you wake up the next day, right? So the pressure on these decisions is much greater than ever before. And so, like Mike was telling you guys, I actually worked for a fairly wealthy entrepreneur and a VC. Sorry, I don't know why this keeps doing this, but and a VC in the pharmaceutical era. He actually, his name is Patrick Soon-Shiong. He actually beat out Elon Musk for wealthiest guy in SoCal. Elon's back now with the Tesla, but Patrick likely got confused one day and he hired me, thinking I could help him. But I went and built their cloud and high-performance computing systems. But I'm not here to talk about Patrick's mistakes. I'm here to talk about mine. When we were over there, we had about 40 different business units in the pharmaceutical space. From genomics, we did a lot of machine learning. We did a lot of molecular modeling, so a lot of graphics processing, which is now used in image recognition today, using NVIDIA GPUs. 40 different business units, and we were trying to build a cloud platform for them, hybrid cloud platform. And one of the biggest mistakes we made was just going and trying to gather requirements, the old way of doing things, like we build infrastructure. We had actually hired one of the big 5 consulting companies. I just won't say their name. But they were like, let's go interview all 40 folks. And we're like, oh my gosh, that's a terrible idea because these guys don't even know what they want. But they came back and they're like, you need to build these 300 services. And right away, you know that's a problem, right? Because when you're talking about infrastructure, fine. That's how we used to build. But like Kurt was talking about, we need to move to this service-led mentality. And when you're thinking about services, think about a restaurant. You don't go to a restaurant because it has the most items on the menu, right? You go there because for an experience, whether it's fine dining, whether it's fast food or casual fast food, buffet, whatever that is, what we had to focus on was the experience, right? So that was one big failure I had. The second big failure we had was driving adoption, right? How many of us have been part of an organization that had a wiki or SharePoint, quad for the Cisco folks in the room, was built, never used, right? Was it because it wasn't technically put together correctly, right? We had technically put it together correctly, but what we didn't figure out was the experience. How are we fundamentally changing the experience from a digital perspective for our customers, right? So I left Patrick's. I actually ended up joining a VAR, a smaller VAR, maybe $200-300 million VAR, and built the cloud and DevOps practice for them, and took it, did pretty well with it actually, as well as the big data analytics practice that we built there as well. And we actually got invited by Cisco, by Chuck Robbins. This is before he ascended the throne, as it were. And he kind of asked us, like, hey, how did you guys do this? And first, we didn't think it was that unique, but he said, look, I've got 1,800 partners here. There's only 2 partners who can compete at your level. And it was us, and it was another sort of $4 billion VAR, right? You guys can Google all this and find out the names. But so we figured, hey, look, we've got something special here. And what we decided to do was go off on our own, start this company called Zentors, where we focus on DevOps, cloud, big data. But what we do is we partner with folks like Entysys, who are the VARs who have this established technology base, this established client base, and these really good client communications, and we bring that expertise, right? Now, we don't partner with every VAR. In fact, we only partner with 4. because this is not the Starbucks model. We're not looking for a partner in every corner. We're looking for very specific partners who can really dominate their area and really, more importantly, have the stomach to make that change because it's not easy. And we found that in Ensys 360. So, one of the things, of course, being on the customer side, right, when I was an operator, the magical thing that vendors would love to do is this. Let me talk to you about these products. They're like, okay, look, I love products. I'm a product developer, but this was not helping. When I was a customer and yet another vendor came to me and they're like, I've got more line card of products, this actually became more confusing than helpful, right? And you look at all these products, by the way, this is 2016, just big data platforms. This has doubled in 2017, right? This becomes very difficult as a customer to figure out, hey, what's real here? And I'm sure, who's bought Lego before? Here, I'm sure all of you have bought some Lego. Lego, you get a nice picture in the front. You open up the box, it's a bunch of pieces. Well, I've got a guidebook to put those pieces together. But that doesn't exist for technology like this, right? So this is one of the big problems. So one of the first things we launched was this thing called a jumpstart. Hey, let me put all of those products together for you for everything above the box, right? And we put it together in a jumpstart. By the way, I came from product development. We didn't just go in some lab and develop this. We interviewed 45 CIOs to see what do you guys want, or guys and gals want to see. They came up with this. We developed this. This thing hit the skids faster than a Scaramucci, okay? It didn't last very long and it had zero success. A lot of people wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to buy, right? And really what it came down to was this, right? You can have a product, you can have something that works. And the reason, I bring this up is because Gartner published this in 2015. Here's all the reasons why people fail. And look, at the VC, we used to do this stuff all day long, right? We used to talk about failed startups, like this is why this startup failed, or this is why IBM had the wrong market, and they didn't have the right supply chain, or they didn't have the right whatever. Most of that stuff's garbage, I'll be honest with you. Really, there's two big things, and it's hard to read here. One is sunk cost bias. Right? We as human beings love to throw good money after bad. We're doing that with a fighter jet in this country right now. It's like, well, we already put $2 trillion into it. Just keep pouring money, it'll work. The second and the biggest one is alignment and consent. I can come to you with some kind of product, but if I cannot gain alignment and consent from the rest of my leadership, it becomes very difficult. So let's think about this. In early 2000s, there was a great Newsweek cover that said, BlackBerry versus Nokia, who's going to battle it out to be king? Neither of them are around. Why? This thing took it, right? The iPhone. And think about in a boardroom of Nokia. I could hold this in my hand. I can hold the competition in my hand. And I can be like, okay, guys, why do we have a keyboard? Like, these guys don't have a keyboard. Makes sense, except in that boardroom is an executive who has 200 engineers here, maybe 2,000 engineers in a plant in Thailand, says, wait, I'm not going to build a keyboard anymore? They're not going to skinny down. In a corporation, a big corporation, people are power. If I have 2,000 people reporting to me and Dane has 1,000, I have more power than he does because I got more people. So I'm not going to skinny down to a 14-person team to build what actually might save the company. And so you run into these alignment problems. And that is actually the biggest challenge we find in big organizations when they're tackling these digital initiatives. So one of the things we came up with, we didn't actually come up with this. We stole this from Harvard, and Microsoft uses this, and we adopted it, to be honest. But it works. Is this innovation delivery framework. What we start with is envisioning, which is, hey, look, can we just get alignment before we get and talk about crazy technologies like why OpenStack versus VMware or pick your technology battle? Can the leaders align? Because if the leaders don't align, everybody else is left to fight bloody, unwinnable battles. And where you can align is things like use cases, instant developer environments, automated onboarding, those types of things. Once we get that alignment, we go into design. Design what we say. Engineering, there's 10 ways to do something, usually 3 good ways. What are those good ways? Then we build it. We're all familiar with the build part of this. But then the launch, this is a big part of where, if you remember, I talked about where we failed. How do you actually launch something, right? How do you actually get people to use it? I'm willing to bet a lot of you folks have services like Dropbox and Hotmail, Mint.com. When was the last time you signed into Mint.com to see all of their new things that they're doing? You don't even use the basic features, right? So how do you drive adoption to that platform? That's a big one, and this is one of the things that we do, right? So I'll give you a quick example where we're working with the Fortune 75 in East Coast, right? They realize, like, hey, we have millennials, and if we don't get on mobile application platforms, we are not going to get to the new generation of buyers, right? So we're helping them build their new application, it takes them 18 months to get a feature out the door. It's far too long, right? So we started this DevOps initiative with them. At first they told us, hey, we don't need you, we got AWS, right? They're consulting for us. They quickly found out that AWS just knows about AWS, and there's a lot more to a project like this. So we were able to come in, do a workshop. We ended up working with the consumer line of business, which is about $16 billion unit. We helped containerize their app. Their main app is one of these where if you get in an accident, you can pop it up. It's a mobile app. It'll tell you all the fix-it shops in your area, if they take your insurance, estimation of damage, et cetera. Just makes the accident experience a lot better. So what we did is we containerized our applications on Docker, have it in a hybrid cloud setup, both on AWS and private cloud. We used some of the HashiCorp tools like Terraform and Vault to do secret passing and some of the configuration management. But now what we've been able to do, and this is an initiative across 3 major IT, consumer line of business, and the actual insurance brokers and agents. What they're able to do is they're able to push out applications and application features in 6 months. So we went down from 18 months down to 6 months. And this means I can take an idea from prototype to production very, very quickly. So now we're taking this not just from the consumer line of business, but to other lines of business as well. So let me give you another one. By the way, any questions on that? All right, I'm just ripping through this. We're doing a health information exchange in South Florida. What they found is they're pulling in data from providers, clinics, hospitals, a number of different providers. And they've been pulling it in and then normalizing them for claims, right? Claims data, they gave it to payors. Payors are insurance companies. Hey, I need to see if this, you had knee surgery, this is what the codes look like, et cetera. What they've realized is over the last 10 years, they've gathered a lot of this data, right? So first, we helped them sort of do that, normalize that, and move that data through. But now we've got this platform with all this aggregate data, and they're saying, hey, wow, we can actually provide an insurance company a better way to build a risk pool, right, than they can themselves. And we have the tools, and we have data across 30 insurance providers. So we're building that data platform using Flink and Kafka for real-time assessments, a Hadoop cluster, and applying actually a lot of the DevOps techniques to data here. So this is another one in the medical field where we're able to help them build business applications and then ultimately mobile applications for their providers, which is the hospitals and clinics, right? So really, I'm not going to dig into too much of this, but 2 of the things we espouse is in development, you have 2 teams. You have a feature development team, the folks that we consider devs, right, developers, building development and building features. But we also encourage what we call an infrastructure development team, right? You guys have all heard this term, infrastructure as code, I'm sure. And what we're seeing, though, is the cultural boundaries here of what used to be kind of traditional IT and dev. A lot of it is solved by kind of characterizing both of these and allowing infrastructure to use some of these development techniques, right? So what do I mean by infrastructure using some development techniques? If I go to a developer and say, hey, roll that code back 3 versions, they're like, sure, go to Git, do that. I go to a network engineer, I say, roll that back 3 versions. They're going to say, like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, I'm still making changes on the box. You still have those cutovers where like, hey, that's not working? Hang on a second. Try it now, right? Can't do that. You used to be able to do that maybe when you had 100 servers. 100 servers became 10,000 VMs. 10,000 VMs are about to be 100,000 containers. Good luck if you're going to manually try to provision all that stuff, right? So we also take customers through this prototype, pilot, and production. Prototype is how do I get an idea? How do I prototype it out, get some early customer wins? But MVP, your minimum viable product, that is something that we take 1 or 2 features and then drive them into production. And this, we do it in 2-week sprints, right? So from when I was a customer, what I really hated was, you're going to sit with me for 8 months to a year, and all we're going to do is talk about strategy? Like, don't leave me with a bunch of binders of diagrams and stuff like that, because it's useless, right? Help me get to a meaningful result in 6 months or less. And that's really what this is designed to do. Once you get that, and you get that 1 or 2 services out there, the momentum of the IT team changes. So we did a financial, just think about Amazon. Amazon released 1 service, S3. 4 years later, EC2. Now you go on the Amazon platform, and they're releasing a service, every couple of months. But on those first 2 services, they figured out the experience of Amazon. This is a developer-led experience. Okay, this is how we do billing, reconciliation, all those things. Once you help an IT team do that, they push out services every 3 to 4 weeks. And the speed, the velocity is incredible. Okay? So I'm not going to belabor this. Look, we are in the Bay. This is like the cradle of innovation here, right? And what I love this clicker. So what we find, though, is we work with a number of companies from the Bay, from small startups who say, listen, thanks for your help, but we've got way more ponytails than you, and we're just going to go at this ourselves. and that's fine. Sometimes they help us. We learn from them as well. But 80% or more of the companies we find, we can generally help, right? What I generally say is, you're going to know your business better than we do. You should. But we're going to know technology better than you do, because we spend all our days doing that. We've done this dozens and dozens of times. And really, all we help you do is you'll figure it out. But what might take you 3 years to do, we'll help you do in a year or less, right, for a fraction of the cost. So you guys have heard this quote, I'm sure. Bill Gates, right? He says, we often overestimate the amount of change that'll happen in 2 years, underestimate the amount of change that'll happen in 10, don't get lulled into inaction. 10 years ago, if somebody came to you and said, hey, Amazon is going to compete for the majority of IT spend, most people would have been like, the bookseller? Please give me a break, right? So don't get lulled into inaction. Get started now, and don't become a ghost of the past. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Am I on? Am I on? Am I on? Okay. I'm on. Good. While I talk for a second, will the panelists please come up and... you're a panelist. Sorry, you can have lunch later. You're not even going to eat any of that. Okay. I'm going to get a picture of you in front of that and use it as blackmail. So, just real quick, the reason we do these big things is to get the message out, and then the next step for us is to come in and just have kind of an interactive dialogue with you guys. To get to Noj, you got to go through me. And by the way, we were lucky enough to have our end user computing practice manager, Al Solorzano, fly up here today to be with us. And one of the things he always tells me about these events is make sure you tell your customers what you're looking for. So I came up with a new spin thanks to Noj. Either you do business with us, or we're sending Noj's ghost to your house. So, anyways, we have a limited amount of time for our panel, and I have all the bios on everybody, but if I do that, then I'm going to introduce them, and we're all going to sit back down and go to the next thing. So if you guys wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, we already know who you are, so we can speed this up. That would be great.
Good afternoon. My name is Raghu Nambiar, CTO for Cisco UCS. Also responsible for product management and solution engineering for emerging technology solutions. That includes big data, analytics, and Internet of Things. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dane Young. I've met with many of you on site at your locations, so I'm the virtualization practice manager here at Intersys 360, cover all things Citrix, Microsoft, VMware, and our ecosystem of products that surround those technologies. Thank you. Go ahead, try.
Okay. Hello? Yes. I'm Jeff Williams, and I'm one of the friendly enterprise technology architects at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. We build infrastructures, the boring hardware stuff. But we've got a lot of experience working with partners such as Intersys, as well as our own ecosystem, and we're shifting, focusing on solutions and business outcomes. So I'm here to represent our product groups.
All right, let's get this thing going. So, Raghu, there have been a lot of companies that have used a lift and shift approach to going to the public cloud. What are the issues with that, and how does a hybrid cloud DevOps approach help with that? And what is Cisco doing around outcome-based solutions to drive that thought process?
So I'm part of the Cisco UCS team. UCS is our data center compute platform. So we have been supporting a private cloud for applications from virtual desktop to traditional enterprise applications like Oracle, SQL, Oracle, Microsoft, SAP, and also emerging technology solutions like big data, analytics, and Internet of Things. So our platform is very designed for cloud deployments. And the private cloud is one aspect, right? And the public cloud is really a reality. Most of our customers are going to have a multi-cloud strategy. So we have announced our solution with Microsoft a few months ago this morning, I don't know whether you have seen the announcement, Cisco is partnering with Google to provide hybrid cloud solution. Again, so we are here to provide best-in-class cloud solution for our customers. Okay.
Very good. Anuj, you want to add to that?
Sure. Yeah, so we see customers in a journey, right? In sort of the early emerging customers, they're moving things out to public cloud, they're trying it out, it is a lift and shift. They're seeing how to put stuff into Amazon, how to put stuff into Azure, and how that plays. Level 2, they get to this hybrid cloud where they're able to kind of migrate workloads around, right? And say, hey, where does my workload best live? And let's just be honest here, nobody, if Microsoft drops their prices by 3 cents, nobody's lifting a bunch of stuff out and moving it to AWS, right? But primarily what we're seeing is once you get to that level of maturity, then you get to this idea called cost to serve, right? So for instance, I can put a workload into AWS, and I'm like, hey, that's costing me $10,000 a month. But if it's a website, an e-commerce website that's making me $100,000 a month, that's easy. That's an easy equation for me. If I go to an IT director today and said, hey, how much does it cost you to onboard a user? Watch their eyes glow and go back to their head and be like, I don't know, let me get back to you. And so this idea of cost to serve is very important. And LinkedIn does a very good job of this, by the way. LinkedIn knows for every profile that you put up, it's $17 a year. That includes their storage and their compute and their content distribution networks and all of that. And actually, Cisco's done a really good job, too. If you guys ever talk to Sidney Morgan from Cisco, he's the one who was responsible for consolidating the Cisco data centers. They have a very good idea internally of cost to serve and how to deliver that. And that's really sort of where you want to get to. A unified experience in hybrid cloud and this idea of cost to serve. But initially, you're going to start with lifting and shifting and seeing kind of how does AWS, how does Azure, how does my private cloud kind of work.
Awesome. For the record, for those of you that were here last year, Sidney Morgan was actually one of our speakers. Always love to have the internal guys come and talk about what they're doing, delivering their outwardly customer messaging into their own internal systems. It's fascinating conversations. So, moving on. Jeff, many customers are now asking about how they do VDI in the cloud, public, private, what have you. How is HP approaching solving this problem?
That's a good question. Everybody knows HP is a product company. We got a simple strategy this year. We're going to try and make hybrid IT simple. We're going to try and take advantage of this Internet of Things revolution. So in this area of VDI, it's interesting because we're building new solutions, working with our ecosystem of partners. We've actually got a new solution called the HPE Intelligent Edge. When you think about edge computing, this is the Internet of Things. It's going to consist of some hardware, some software from Citrix, some software-defined storage from another of our partners, Atlantis, but it's going to allow customers to deliver not only secure desktops, but secure applications through the cloud or on-premise or in a hosted data center, and it's all managed from a cloud management platform. That's an interesting solution from an infrastructure hardware manufacturer, but that's actually one of the things that we're working with Citrix and Atlantis and Intersys 360 being one of our partners in implementation, Citrix thinking, knowledge, subject matter expertise. That whole ecosystem of us 4 partners are actually bringing that solution to market, and it's available today.
Cool. Dane, or Mr. Young, or Dane Young. At Intersys, we have developed hybrid cloud, VDI, or digital workspace solutions. What challenges have customers faced, and how are we helping them overcome them?
Sure. So obviously, we've been working with a lot of our customers in the area, and some of which have had cloud directives or strategies around cloud technologies, public cloud, private cloud, et cetera. And obviously, in the end user computing space, one of the benefits that we've seen over the years is that your application performance improves dramatically when you move the execution of the applications closer to where the back-end applications actually reside. Whether it's a line of business application like Dynamics or SQL or whatever it may be, moving the execution environment into the data center, into the public cloud where the applications reside, gives you a boost in the user experience and the performance of that application. So we've worked with a number of different customers over the years who, many of which have ping-ponged or yo-yoed into public cloud and then back out again, kind of like the tier 2 like you were talking about, where they're evolving, they're figuring out what does that strategy look like. It's not all one or the other, but in a lot of cases it's both. And particularly from a Citrix perspective, they've made a lot of investments to enable us as integrators to more easily have those conversations with customers, to be able to say, hey, I'm going to build your application constructs once, I'm going to build your images once, and then be able to take that portable image and be able to push it up to Amazon, be able to push it up to Azure, be able to push it onto a vSphere or Zen server platform. That ability is something that's really necessary because organizations are constantly lifting and shifting and moving the back-end applications. And so it's really important to be able to move the front-end execution of those applications as well, because if any of the technologists out there have ever had to go through like a VMDK to AMI conversion process for Amazon, you're probably going to blow your heads out every time you have to do that conversion, right? So having the technologies and the tool stack in the tool belt to be able to do those migrations of take an image that's built on-prem and move it off to another hypervisor, move it off to another cloud provider, that's really what's helpful for a lot of the organizations that we're working with, where the guys that are responsible for making the decisions or implementing the decisions aren't necessarily the ones that are picking, hey, we're going with Azure this week because Microsoft said they'd give us a sweet deal, and Amazon, yeah, we don't really care about them as much anymore. So that's kind of what we're seeing in the market.
Okay, quick funny story. Many of you may wonder why we did it here and not on that beautiful Hornblower yacht out there. We tried that once upon a time, and it was a little bit later in the season. And let's just say we had a major storm that night, and then we weren't allowed to dock, and our customers got trapped on the boat, and like 10 people got seasick. So if you want to do that, do it with your own families, but there will never be one of our events that happened there. That being said, Raghu, with digital transformation on platforms like UCS and HyperFlex, how is Cisco changing the way customers view IT?
So digital transformation is a very broad initiative from a Cisco perspective. It's all about connecting the unconnected. Some of the speakers before the panel, they talked about IoT and the digital transformation. So there are two major drivers when you talk about digital transformation. One is connected devices. If you look at today, there are 25 billion connected devices. Okay, by 2020, you're talking about 50 billion connected devices. 6 billion smartphones by 2020. 220 million connected cars. That is the connected device aspect. Now let's look at the people aspect. Today there are 50% of the world population has internet access. By 2020, you're talking about 80% of the people connected to the internet. So when you connect the unconnected, the possibilities are endless. Let's look at education, for example. The classrooms will become digital. Connected health is going to transform the healthcare industry. Anuj talked about one of the examples in his presentation. Then the utilities, smart grid on one side and smart meters on the other side, benefiting both providers and customers. Industry 4.0 is pretty much transferring the manufacturing side. So the possibilities are endless. And from a partner perspective, you have opportunities at the edge to sell, edge routers, real-time analytics software and hardware stacks at the edge. And also, like, the data will move to the data center where you need a large amount of compute and storage, where you do historical analysis, build the models, and push the model to the edge. So, from a Cisco's perspective, we are looking at edge, enterprise, and the cloud for digitization or digital transformation.
Awesome. Jeff, you want to weigh in on that? From HP side?
Yeah. This whole infrastructure building business has created some interesting perspectives from us in architecture. Starting out in engineering, the classic problem was, hey, we need you to solve rain, and we need you to solve it yesterday. But then you get into architecture and you think, well, wait a minute. we can solve rain. It's probably 2 of the different umbrella designs. It's probably eave overhangs, parkas, and all that. But what's important, who's getting wet? Because if it's like my wife with the $300 and $400 hairstyles, I need 2 umbrellas and an eave, and I need to drive the car up. But if it's my 13-year-old son who just got finished playing in the mud, we actually don't have to care. So when we're thinking about building infrastructures, it's swinging back to what are we using this stuff for? And how can we best make it most efficient? Because the whole IT world is now looked at as an area where if you're not helping us make money in the business, get out of the way. Because we saw the graphic, 60%, people can go around the folks that are supposed to take care of infrastructure and computer services. So how do we get a handle on that as IT professionals? And how do we take advantage of all of these new technologies that didn't exist 5 years ago? And the new methods and the new, not just platforms, but the interfaces on how equipment works together. It's uplifted how we think about building solutions.
Cool. All right, Anoj, you're on the spot again. When we perform digital transformation workshops around DevOps, one of the biggest things, and this is good news for the IT people in the room, that we deal with is not issues with IT, but it's issues with organization and culture. How big of that is an issue? How much has to be addressed, and how do we deal with that?
So that's generally the hardest thing. Humans are the hardest machines to upgrade. You got to upgrade them a couple of times too. They reject upgrades. So what you find is if you try to do the old consulting thing, which I've fallen victim to, where you try to align all the leaders, you're never going to get that alignment, right? Because they're fighting their own little turf battles. But where you can really get involvement is really with the technical teams, but really centering around a win, a use case and a quick win, right? So don't let them go for a year just discussing, creating strategies, because you lose that momentum and people start to get distracted and go on to other things. And so if your initiative is taking that long to get to a meaningful outcome, you're really in jeopardy, right? So you want your digital initiative to really produce an outcome within the first 6 months, right? Once you get that first quick win, then you get 1 or 2 dev teams on there using this new CI/CD platform, then you can really add to that, right? And I'll give you an example. So I was a consultant for Blizzard for a while, and I remember we were consulting for them, and one of these Pivotal came in, right? So Pivotal said, hey, look, we've got this brand new platform. And Pivotal has a good platform, by the way. But what was happening was there's a bunch of sunk costs, right? We talked about that a little bit, sunk costs. So these folks have already built all their CI/CD pipelines and blah, blah, blah. And every time a developer would ask a question like, hey, we're using Jenkins, or I've got this Git thing over here, Pivotal would say, oh, yeah, you don't need that anymore. We've got this new thing over here. Pretty quickly, the devs are like, oh, man, and you think about this, like, you can't go and tell Blizzard, like, here are better ways to build software. They've been building world-class software for the last 15 years. Yeah. But where you found to Jeff's point is like, what do these folks really need? What they needed was, so there was a challenge where, I don't know, somebody had hacked into the World of Warcraft and stolen characters and stuff like that. And they needed to come in on this big patch Tuesday and make this change. And so developers show up, 10 a.m. early for developers, right? Making all their changes. And so they're compiling all their changes, and what was happening, they were getting stuck at the build farm. So these changes were queuing up to change number 68, number 100. And so if these guys wanted to see their change, they couldn't go home until their change was made. So what they were doing is they were going and bribing the build team with like, hey, here's tickets to a game, or here's beer. Like, take me up from number 68 to number 3. That's obviously bad behavior, right? So going back to that organizational change, that organizational behavior, it's really, where's that bottleneck? Can we solve that? Can we get that quick win? Once you have that quick win and you get people on there, then you gather momentum. And that's the best way to get that cultural change. Not force feed it down from top down, but really have people adopt because, hey, this is a better way to do things.
So Raghu, you deal with tiny little projects like transforming smart cities, around the world and stuff like that. Do you see some of these same challenges, and how do you deal with that?
Absolutely. I just got back from a trip from Asia, 1 week in China and 1 week in India. A lot of exciting things happening around the world on transforming the cities. Believe it or not, a lot of these challenges are not really technical. It is all dealing with laws and bureaucracy and things like that. But when it comes to an enterprise, I think there are two main things to consider. One is invest in people, okay, develop skills, especially the emerging platforms. Second thing is pick the right platform to run your application. These two things are going to be extremely critical.
Awesome. Dane, based on what you have seen, or on what you have seen, are we ready, when appropriate, to put desktops in Azure or AWS? If so, what are the good use cases, and what are the things to look out for?
So I would have answered this question 3 or 4 years ago the same way that I'm answering it now, and the answer is yes, absolutely, but it depends on the use case. So we had some customers that were early adopters when it came to public cloud. They were fighting a lot of those battles that came with the platform being very early, particularly as it related to deploying end-user computing products, Citrix technologies, NetScalers, all that gamut of stuff into public clouds. And the answer is yes, absolutely, but it depends on the use case. It depends on the application. So if the organization is very much aligned to an OpEx model, they want the benefits that come along with knowing that they can shut down services, or shut down different parts of the organization functions at any point in time and recoup some of those costs. That's certainly a good opportunity for public cloud. The others that we're seeing a lot more regularly now is for organizations that are more CapEx aligned. A lot of them are growing tired of buying duplicate infrastructure for DR sites and saying things like, what if I can use things like Azure Site Recovery or Veeam to back up my workloads into the public cloud and then be able to restore those workloads in the public cloud, but have my access infrastructure, my Citrix infrastructure also available in the public cloud, so that I have a landing point for those users to then connect to those workloads and get access to those applications. If my building where 600 employees physically reside craters and my data center happen to be there as well, sure, I can recover my data center, right? And I can restore my data center in my DR site or in Azure, but what about those 600 users? Well, there's a business continuity opportunity for deploying workloads that are ready to go, enterprise ready, have all the applications loaded, ready to spin up at any point. And in the event of a disaster and your users can't get to that physical office location, they would then have a workspace that's ready to go, ready to build, ready to be configured for their needs and their applications inside of that public cloud resource location. So we're seeing a lot of burst capacity requirements where organizations need to burst for seasonality. Maybe they're in a retail environment and they have a 40% customer service increase during 4 months out of the year. That's a perfect opportunity to leverage public cloud for that, because then you don't have to pay for the infrastructure all year round. You have a DR use case, and you have organizations that are much more OpEx aligned, because that's the way that their finance teams and their alignment within the board, and perhaps they're publicly traded, they like to see more of an OpEx model. So that's where we're seeing a lot of the good use cases for public cloud. Anybody that's run a quick 6th grade calculator can figure out pretty quickly that running 24/7, 365 workloads in the public cloud consistently is going to be more expensive than when you're purchasing infrastructure and deploying it on-prem. So that's where we say it really depends on the use case, it depends on the application, it depends on what is it exactly that you're trying to achieve, what are you trying to accomplish, and more importantly, making sure that you have a framework that allows you to have that any platform, any cloud strategy, and not being pigeonholed or decided upon you have to use this external provider when you need something that's offsite.
Good answer. Okay, so final question before we move into the next phase of this. I personally, and I don't know where I know where some of you are on your cloud journey, but I have a large percentage of my customers that say we have a cloud-first initiative. And they've been saying that to me for several years. And when I interview many of them today, they're still in the first 10% of their journey. And so for each of you, starting with Jeff, moving down the line, when do you think customers are really ready to accelerate their journey? And I don't mean public cloud. A cloud initiative is not this one entity thing. It's a many entity thing that is private, public, maybe multi-private, multi-public, a lot of different things. But even getting to that is a challenge. When is it that the lights come on and they're really ready to move? What is stopping them and what enables them?
That's a good question. And from a perspective, when I started this whole computer thing, yeah, I was actually 16 and I was brilliant.
5 years ago?
But the thing, I worked at IBM and they were preaching this discipline around data center discipline and efficiency and how to basically get a group of people to agree on methods and procedures and processes in anticipation for a world that was going to be digital and automated. So if I think back there to now, well, the world is digital and we do have automation capability, but when a question gets posed around, do you think we're ready? The first place I'm going is the people and the processes. Do you have a method to catalog what you actually have, how it works, who uses it, who connects with it, and just a basic understanding of what we call herding cats? Do we know what the left hand is doing and the right hand is doing? Because we see challenges from IT now that businesses have risk and reward responsibility. We actually don't have to depend on IT if they're an inhibitor. So these are some of the challenges when you think we still got to support legacy applications, still got to keep the lights going. We're not going to HPE. Meg Whitman decided, let's split the company. What's the implication? Well, say you have 200,000 employees, some real simple thing like going from jeffrey.q.williams@hp.com to jeffrey.q.williams@hpe.com. For 200,000 people, how long does that take? How many people? Do we have a method? And do we have a thinking in our executive team that values what we can do in technology? In 2017 and 2020, we've been hearing about DevOps methods from the software and development environment. Those tools are actually available for hardware building as well. Remember, this Internet of Things allows machines to build machines, but at the end of the day, it's still the innovation, this idea of people. Hey, this is a good idea. Can we take advantage of it? We're ready when we know as an executive team, whatever we want to do as a business, the supporting functions, IT and everybody, will allow us to actually make business decisions that aren't inhibited by technology or people or processes.
You thought I was going to go to
Yeah,
you
you
next.
said down the line.
I think the time is now. The industry landscape is changing really quickly. If you look at your partners and the customers, there are new competition emerging. So you have seen the kind of disruptions that Amazon caused in the retail sector, or Uber and Lyft in the transportation, and Airbnb in the hospitality. So I think time is now. Unlike in the past, traditional applications, we wrote the application and ran the application for 5 or 10 years. Now things are changing. Some of the applications have a life of like 1 day or a few days. So your infrastructure should be able to support that. So the private cloud is the way to go to optimize your infrastructure for applications. And again, public cloud is a reality. It is an opportunity in certain cases. It is a threat as well. There are two things to consider. One is when you look at public cloud, are you really going to save money? Okay, or is it a OpEx versus CapEx discussion? So this is a number one consideration. Second thing is, cloud is not always standard based. Okay, if you look at some of the data management platform that is available on public cloud, it is pretty much proprietary. So is your company's vision to invest in standard-based architectures, or proprietary is okay with you? So these are the two considerations that you have to factor in your public cloud decisions.
Dane, you're holding the microphone. So you're next.
So I think one of the biggest opportunities that we've seen is when we look at organizations that we've historically done work with, and maybe it's a virtualization initiative, maybe it's an end-user computing initiative, whatever it may be, the time that's invested into gaining that consent is pretty significant. And then if that team that's involved in gaining consent doesn't immediately start to see quick wins and start to see, hey, what we've actually invested time, what we've actually focused on here is actually making a difference to the business, unfortunately what often happens is that those initiatives fail, those initiatives stall. The people that are putting in the blood, sweat, and tears to actually make that thing happen lose interest because they're disheartened. And that disheartening affects their ability to deliver a quality service. So where I've seen the most success is with organizations that go at it from a perspective of a service definition, defining what is that service that we're delivering to the stakeholders, how do we define that service, what are the technology components that make up that service, and then focusing on getting quick wins, focusing on quickly delivering value back to the business. Because just like us, we're, the term is value-added reseller, we're here to deliver value to you as clients. We're here to deliver value to the industry. And likewise, you're there to deliver value to your stakeholders. You're there to deliver value to the people that pay your salaries and pay for IT services to be delivered. And so if you're not delivering value, your stakeholders are going to lose trust in your ability to consistently deliver value down the road and in the future. So what I would encourage you is that when it comes to new initiatives, there's this expression, you could take whatever you're choosing, boil the ocean or eat an elephant, whichever one you prefer. But I would argue that a lot more of our organizations that we're working with that are very successful in these initiatives are ones that are taking an agile development methodology around the way that they're delivering services back to their organization. And this can come in the form of end-user computing and virtual desktops and application delivery and secure browsers and all of these different aspects. You don't need to spend 6 months evaluating all of those key stakeholders, identifying what those requirements are, identifying what those goals are, and then spending all that time up front to build a service that's now too late because you missed the ball. You missed the mark. You missed where that organization could receive that value and then deliver that value back out to their stakeholders, which your stakeholders are your employees or your staff members at your organization. Their stakeholders are their clients and their customers that ultimately they need to see value being delivered to. Otherwise, they're not doing their job. So it's all about following that value chain and figuring out how do we deliver the right amount of value and how do we do it quickly and with agile methodology and not the waterfall effect of we're going to go through 16 months of RFPs and get all these bids and all these responses, and then finally we might be able to deliver a proof of concept, which a lot of these technologies, if you're still doing proof of concepts, you're wasting your time because the technology is solid, the technology is mature. It's more about a technical evaluation to see how can we apply the technology to your organization. That's really what we should be focusing on. So with that, I think I've learned a lot from Manoj and his team, and I feel like there's a lot that we can apply around the DevOps mentality around just traditional professional services delivery and the way that we go about business. So that's my take.
Yeah, 1 minute.
All right. So cloud, it's not private. It's not about hybrid. It's really about how does IT become more relevant to the business, right? It has nothing to do with the technologies underneath. It's really about IT becoming more fundamental to the business. These are IT businesses, folks. Netflix, Uber. This is becoming more important than ever before. This is your chance to do it. Are you ready? Were you ready to have kids? No, you weren't. I don't care what anybody tells me, and many courses that you took or whatever, you're not ready. You just got to do it and get started. Thank you.
All right. These guys manage portfolios worth millions and billions of dollars. Obviously, they see great value in taking their time out to come here today to present to you. So, Raghu.
Thank you.
Manoj. Dane.
Thank you, boss.
Jeff, thank you very much for your time. One final note before we go to our next speaker. I talked kind of jokingly before about Anuj's ghost, but our simple goal out of these things is to hopefully pique your interest and come spend time dialoguing more around digital transformation, what you're doing and what we're doing, desktop transformation, and really the whole data center discussion. So hopefully this kind of inspires you around this, where we can all go get creative together. So on to the next part. I'm like a little kid right now, and it's like time to open my Christmas present. One of the awesome things that Matt and I have been able to experience in owning a business like this is when we do these types of things, not just to bring in great speakers, but to be a little bit selfish and bring in people that maybe represent things that we've been fans of for a long time. And anybody that's been to any of ours, we don't just pick anybody. We hope for something that means something to us. So our next our next speaker, Bob Myers, celebrity, the general manager from the Golden State Warriors. We've been fans since we were little kids growing up here in the Bay Area. Bob is in his 4th year as general manager of the Golden State Warriors, and I don't know about you, but talk about transformation. The last 3 years have been pretty damn good, so very exciting, and we know this year is going to be just as good. In this role, he reports directly to co-executive chairman and CEO Joe LaCobe and oversees the entire basketball operations department on a day-to-day basis. He was named the 2014-15 NBA Executive of the Year for constructing a roster that won a franchise record 67 regular season games and won the 2015 NBA Championship, the team's first title in 40 years. We know what happened the next year, eclipsing the win or the number of wins in a season, and then last year winning the NBA championship again. I could go on, but you don't want to hear from me, so everybody, Bob Myers.
I'm glad you cut that short. Especially the celebrity part. I don't even know what that means. I actually know what it means a little bit. Our team just went to Shanghai and Shenzhen in China. I don't know if you guys have been to China, but I've been to China a few other times, and it's an experience if you've never been. I don't know that I would plan my summer vacation to go there, but if you end up going there, you'll remember it. I remember it for they're crazy about basketball in China. They're crazy. And our fans are pretty good here in Oakland, in the Bay Area, and even in other cities now. But in China, it's rabid because they don't get to see us and touch us and be near us. And their culture is very kind of, if you've been on a subway there or in a bus, it's the space that they allocate between each person is not what we think is okay. So they're right next to you and they're right up in you. And so I joke about this celebrity thing. So here and there, because of our team, people will say, hey, thanks a lot. The Warriors are great. But that's fine. Nobody bothers me. But in China, I was there with my dad, and I never had done a foot massage. And I don't know if maybe the guys aren't comfortable with this, but foot massages are pretty good. I mean, if you've never done them, you should try a foot massage. Especially because they made it all dark in the room, and you can fall asleep, which I know every guy probably likes falling asleep if they can. Females probably you guys get foot massages or massages more often. Anyways, the point of the story is, to get to the foot massage, I had to go through a mall in China from the hotel. We were staying at the Ritz-Carlton in the financial Pudong district of Shanghai. So we were kind of rushed because I had to make the bus to go to the game. And so because of the fact that there were fans outside our bus and our hotel for 24 hours, all the time, all day and night. So for a brief few days, as I walked in and out, even me, now you can understand it for Steph Curry and Kevin Durant and all these people, they're celebrities, and they get mobbed. They cannot walk outside their hotel or anywhere, even here, but especially in China. It's not possible without security. You know, and if you experience that, if you've ever experienced that, it is not cool. You wouldn't like it. I wish we could all have that. The money for them is awesome, but not being able to walk from here to there by yourself isn't cool. So I experienced what that might be like because I had to make this foot massage appointment, but I knew that if I went outside, I couldn't get past those throngs. And then when I got to the mall, you literally get attacked. And not attacked like beaten up attacked, but pictures and autographs. And so I'm one of these people that if I need to be there in 10 minutes, I know exactly how long it'll take. But I had to factor in how long it would take to get through the mall, knowing that I would be grabbed by a multitude of Chinese boys and girls, men and women, fans. And I came back thinking, okay, that's what it's like to be somebody famous. And I thought, it sucks. Like, I wouldn't want it. I would not want that. I don't want it. I wouldn't want it. So for those of you that are thinking, I know you're not here to talk about what it'd be like to be a celebrity, but if that ever happens to you, you'll remember this. So I think what might be interesting for you guys to hear is, I know there's people from Southern California here and people from local. So I've done both. I lived in LA for 18 years. I went to UCLA. I grew up here though. So I'll tell you a little bit about my journey, my own journey, which to me, you know, it's my life. And as I look back on it, it's more interesting looking back than having lived to where I am. And then also our team, the transformation of our team. I was talking to Kathy outside. It sounds like your company is already pretty great, which is awesome. And then it's more about sustaining. For me in my life and for our team, the Warriors, we were never really that until now, until the last 2 or 3 years. We were always the ones looking up at the top saying, we can't climb that mountain, we can't get there. So I can relate more to that mentality of the underdog than sitting atop the mountain looking down and saying, we are the best and everybody's trying to be us. That's a little unfamiliar for me. I grew up here in the East Bay, and I was never really a great athlete. I was never the best player on my team. I knew who those kids were. I wished I was one of those guys or girls. And you guys probably know who they were too. But I never was. But I loved playing basketball. And that's all I really knew. For me, it was kind of a sanctuary. I would, when things weren't great, and we all go through ups and downs in childhood, I would go outside and shoot baskets. Like, that's what I would do. I don't know what you guys did. I'm sure you did something. You may draw, you may watch TV, you may listen to music. For me, it was playing basketball. So because I was drawn to it so much, I got good enough. I never got great, but I got good enough to where my senior year of high school, I was the best player on the team my senior year of high school. It's the only time in my life I've ever been the best at anything I've ever done, was that 4 months of my life. And again, I didn't quite embrace that because it was very unfamiliar. And hopefully you guys have experienced, I think we all should get to be the best at something for a little while. Because it is a great feeling, especially if you've worked hard for it. I didn't get there through talent. I wasn't by any stretch the most talented player, but I love to play. And the lesson I learned from that experience was, if you work really hard at something, whether you're the top of your company or the bottom or the middle, the one thing I learned in my life is that hard work actually pays off. I promise that to everybody. Forget about anything else you hear. If you work hard at something, you'll get better at it. And 2, it'll pay off. The problem we have is that we live in a culture now, in a society, that we want instant gratification, right? I worked hard for a week. I want the promotion now. What do you mean? I came in early for a week. I stayed late. Yeah, okay, you did it for a week. It's like a player coming to me and saying, why aren't I playing? I stayed after for 3 days. Yeah, but there's been people who staying after for 10 years that are better. Steph Curry, after every practice, does the same drill. He's done it for 9. I've known him been with the Warriors for 7 years. I've seen it every day. I've seen it when he wasn't playing. I've seen it was in the MVP. I saw it today. It's the same thing every day. That's how you become great. So for me, I didn't know any of that stuff. Nobody told me. I wish somebody would have told me something. I don't know if you guys had great mentors. My brother, who's my older brother, he'll send me things from time to time, and he sent me something recently that I thought was really cool, which for those of you who have kids or don't, he said, instead of asking our kids, what do you want to be, let's ask them who they want to be. I thought that was really interesting. That would have mattered to me if somebody had said that to me. I learned who to be. We learn it through our parents. We learn it through our friends, our society. But I think when you get asked that in 3rd or 4th grade, you say fireman, you say a policeman, you say whatever you say. You don't even know what you're saying. You don't know what it's like to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher, or anything. But you got to say something. But instead of what do you want to be, it's who do you want to be? Because if we can figure out who we want to be, we can probably become what we want to be. But we look at it a different way. We say, my goal is to be a lawyer. I don't care what kind of person I am. I'm going to be a lawyer. And then you end up, I am a lawyer too, and we get ripped because there's probably a lot of lawyers that should get ripped on. They do make life a little more difficult, but we need them. But again, that doesn't mean, that should not be the goal, to become something as an occupation, to become something as a person. So for me, like I said, I thought I lost for those of you that play sports or do anything, I lost my basketball career ended in the worst way that one could end, short of an injury. We were playing in the playoffs of high school, and we went up 1 point. We thought we won the game. The clock ran out. The ball went out of bounds. Our fans rushed the floor. we were going on to kind of the semifinals of the state, which was a big deal for us. The referee said, get off the court, the game's not over. So we were celebrating, and they told all our fans, get back up in the stands. We're putting 2 seconds on the clock, the ball rolled out of bounds, and the game is not over. So I'm guarding the guy who went on to play at Stanford, this guy, Mark Madsen. And there's moments in high school you never forget. There's moments in your life you never forget. I remember sitting there before the ball got inbounded, and I said, Mark, what are you guys going to, he was my friend. He was on the other team. He was my rival high school. I went to Monte Vista, he went to San Ramon. And I said, what are you guys going to do? Knowing he's not going to tell me. I said, what play are you going to run? And he said something like, and Mark was funny. He said, like, don't worry, baby. And he's a white guy. I don't know why he's saying this stuff or anybody says that. But he says, and so they threw the ball in. He caught it. I was guarding him. He shot it. He made it. We lost. Their fans stormed the court. And literally, like, it's one thing to lose at anything when you've worked really hard. But it's another thing to lose in that way that kind of sits with you forever, right? Forever. It never goes away. That's the thing about sports and about these pivotal moments in our life where things change. We don't want to tell our kids where you choose to go to college, who you choose to marry. These are the biggest decisions of your life. But we don't want to acknowledge that because that scares us, right? Like, I don't want to tell my daughters, there's going to be a moment in high school where you win or lose and you're never going to forget it. That's too much to handle, I think. That's too much to tell somebody that's a kid. It's too much to think about as an adult sometimes. But that was the end of my basketball. The thing I loved more than anything was over that night. That's when it ended, because I wasn't good enough to go to college. I wasn't good enough to go play anywhere, for that matter. So I was going to UCLA. I applied all these schools, not for basketball, and I walked into UCLA, and there was an athletic department. My brother rode crew at Washington, and I walked into the athletic department with my dad, and I said, let's go, maybe I'll do something in college, like a sport, but I can't play basketball at UCLA. They're too good. So I walked over to the desk, and there was one guy sitting there, a young guy, and he happened to be the administrative assistant of the basketball team. So my dad and I said, do you know where the crew, the rowing department is? We were thinking my son was going to maybe try out. And he said, I don't think we have that sport here. I don't know if we have crew, or maybe it's a club sport. A club sport means it's not identified with the school, but it's kind of off campus. And then he looked at me, and I was about an inch shorter than I am now, and he said, why don't you try out for the basketball team? And that'd be, I don't know how to properly say that would be, we all in high school probably did something. If you were a dancer, that'd be like the equivalent of the New York or Joffrey, the San Francisco Ballet going, why don't you try out for us? And you go, yeah, that's nice, but that's not, I can't do that. Or if you were an athlete, Alabama football, if you're a football player, why don't you come play for us? You go, no, nobody's recruiting me. I'm not going to be able to play for the best football team in the country like that. What do you thank you, but I would embarrass myself. So in any event, my response to that was, I can't play at UCLA. I'm not good enough. And he said, why don't you just try out? We take one guy as a walk-on every year. And I said, yeah, but even that guy or whoever, I can't, the only thing I am is tall. And he said, I said to him, I said, what about if I could be the manager of the team? And he said, why don't you just try to play? So here again, right? In our lives, I sit up here and people say I did what I did for the Warriors, and I did my part, I do my part, but people help us, right? That conversation changed my life because one guy was saying to me, and I was saying, I can't do that. Thank you, but I can't do it. One person saying, yes, you can, right? And to be honest, I love my parents. They're together, been married, I don't know, almost 50 years. I didn't really get that. They told me to work hard. They taught me more through action than words to pursue something I love, my dad worked for the same company for 40 years. The direction was get an education and get a job. It wasn't chase your dream. It wasn't find something you love to do, help people. It wasn't any of that. And again, I love how they raised me, but as a father, I'm not going to give that message to my kids. I'm not going to say get a job. I'm going to say it in a different way. I'm going to say get a career, find something you love. because I'm sitting there with an opportunity, somebody in front of me is telling me, you can do this, and giving me this up, and I'm saying, no, I can't. Because how did I get there to that place where I'm saying, thank you, but no, I can't. But you know what? I did try to walk on. And here's how it worked. I showed up early, and for the first month, you're not allowed to play with the ball. So we just ran. All we did was run and get in shape. That's it. That's not fun. Like, if you're playing basketball, you want to dribble the ball, you want to shoot it, you want to play. We just conditioned. Track, weight room, gym. The players that were on scholarship were so much better than me in every capacity, and they were the ones that the school would basically do anything. They said, please come to UCLA. You're the best. The O'Bannon brothers, these are the best. They could have gone to any college they wanted to. So I'm sitting there on the side, not afraid to say anything to them, trying to stay out of their way, knowing I have no business being there. I go back to my dorm room, and my friends and everybody goes, what are you doing trying to play basketball at UCLA? Why don't you just join a fraternity and have fun? You're not gonna make the team. And I'd say, something inside of me said, I'm at least gonna try. But I promise you, nobody was telling me this is a good idea. Nobody was saying, I wasn't listening to Tony Robbins in the background. I wasn't doing anything. I was just maybe it is a stupid idea. But I kept doing it. And, the people, it's interesting. It's a little bit like the tortoise and the hare. I love that fable because it's so powerful in that if we keep inching along in life, we pass the hare. We will pass the person that got this start that we think we could have never gotten. So I just kept San Antonio Spurs are really successful. They call pounding the rock. Everybody can apply that to their career, just pounding the rock. One day the rock breaks, but for 1,000 days, you're not doing anything. You're just hitting it and you're going, nothing's happening. So that's what I was doing. And I remember the day that there was the actual tryout. And the coach called me over and he said, it was about 100 and something people, and I played and I did okay. And the coach showed up, the head coach sat in a chair, pulled his paper out, watched for about 5 minutes. You kind of look over and see if he wasn't even really watching. And then they called me over and the coach said, hey, what's your name? And I said, blah, blah. And he said, congratulations. And he got up and walked away. And I remember thinking, there's these, for me, it might have been winning our championship. It's the birth of your kid. There's these moments again in your life where you go, it's too much to process. It's a promotion you never thought you were going to get. It's your first kid. It's when your spouse said yes, or when your husband asked you to marry. It's these moments where you go, I can't. And I'm not even good at that anyway. I don't know. You guys might be better. I'm not good at taking all that in. It takes time for me to look back and go, wow, that was huge. So my way of dealing with it was I didn't tell anybody. I went back to my room, and my roommate was so, and I go, I don't know. And he says, how do you not know? And I said, I don't know. And he said, what did they say? I said, they said I made the team. And he says, well, then you effing do know. And I said, yeah, but I don't know if it's real. And he said, what do you mean you don't know if it's real? And I said, it doesn't make sense. I'm not supposed to be on UCLA's basketball. It doesn't make sense. And he goes, well, are you on the team or not? And I said, I think I am. And he said, what is the confusion? I said, are you going to practice? Because practice was starting. And he said, you get a uniform? And I said, they asked me what number. And he said, then you get a uniform. So I ended up, I'm not lying. I ended up telling my parents 4 days later. And I really trickled out the news because I actually didn't think it was going to stay that way. I thought somebody's going to tap you on the shoulder and be like, yeah, you really think you made the team? You're no chance. I thought that's what was coming. But again, something inside of me, I imagine a lot of you have, maybe because I was chasing something I was so passionate about, or maybe my one quality was hard work. Maybe that was the only thing that we all get blessed with something, some quality that we have, some characteristic, and maybe that was mine that helped me get there. So my career at UCLA, I never played. I was the guy, my first year, as a freshman, we had a band at UCLA. A lot of colleges have bands, and when we would be up 30 or down, we were actually not down 30 ever, but whenever the point when the game was that putting me in the game could not have impacted the score at all. Like, nothing I could have done, could have put any of you guys in the game, and you couldn't have lost the game for us because it wasn't possible. It's not possible to score 30 points in 50 seconds. And the band would kind of cheer they had this chant for me, some B.O.B. bot, something they did, which again, I'm not, you can, if you were there in the mid-90s, you know what I'm talking about. But, kind of embarrassing. Like, you don't really want to be that guy. But I was like, look, I'm playing on the team, and I shouldn't be playing much. I'm not good enough. But I stay with it. My sophomore year, we lost in the first round of the tournament that year, which was, we were supposed to be better. And we lost to a team, we got killed. And I'll get to this point later, but when we lost that game, we were in the locker room, and I looked around the locker room. We had a really talented team. And I saw how we lost. It's important how you lose. It's important how you feel failure. And I'll talk about that with the Warriors. I looked around the locker room, and I said, if that guy comes back, and there's a guy on our team, Ed O'Bannon, and I said, if that guy comes back, I think we're going to win the championship the following year. I've only ever thought that twice in my life. The group I was part of, if you guys were competing, and I've been involved in competition at UCLA and now with the Warriors, only twice I've ever said, I think we're going to win the championship. That year, coming off that loss, my sophomore year at UCLA, I thought we were going to win. And we did win because of how we lost, if that makes sense to you, because how we dealt with losing. We went on the following year to lose only 2 games. We won the NCAA tournament. And that, again, you talk about your life, like you win a championship in sports, and it's not a lot of things stay. Your graduation, like I say, your kids, there's certain moments, but it's not the ring, it's not the whatever it is. It's the fact that I know we won and we put in the work. But still, I didn't play. I mean, I played in the Final Four game for like 15 seconds in the semifinal game. So now I'm starting to hear people go, what are you doing? You're never going to play. Right? You're never going to, well, yeah, okay, now you won a championship. Like you're one of the 12 guys. You have a ring. You're on the UCLA team. You have a championship. Now let's just hang out. Have a good time. And I said, I actually like practice, guys. Like I don't play I'm not going to the NBA. I don't play for money. I do like practicing, though. Like, it's fun for me. I like it'd be like you guys saying, I like going to work. It's not about the one important meeting. It's like everything leading up to it I liked. So I kept doing it. In my junior year, the coach had never said anything to me in the first half of a game. Because the first half of the game's still undecided. We don't know who's going to win or lose. And I remember we were playing a game, and it was probably 4 or 5 games into the season, and the coach goes, Myers. And I thought, first of all, I was thinking, why is he calling my name? Like, what is he doing? And then he said it again, and I'm thinking, shit. I was thinking, I'm cheering. Like, why does he, did I do something wrong? Am I, like, is my foot on the floor? Do I not have the right warm-up jacket on? Or does somebody need some water? So he goes, so the assistant coach goes, the coach is calling your name. And I said, I know, what do you want me to do? And he says, go in the game. And I was thinking like, oh shit. I'd never been in the first half of a game in my life in college. And I was a junior, and the game we were actually losing the game. Not by a lot, but we were losing by 5, 10 points. But the starters, he was sick of them. They weren't trying. It's like, you guys are out. So he put me in. And crazy story, I scored 20 points in the game, which prior to that moment, I had scored 20 points over a 2-year period. So in one game, I eclipsed like my career total of points. But it was one of those things where like, there's a lot of great quotes. John Wooden has one, Lincoln has one. He says, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So everybody goes, oh, you're so lucky. And to be honest, I was lucky. The ball bounced my way. I met some, just when you play a sport, sometimes things go your way. It just happens. And it went my way. And it was, again, one of those moments where I had to do the press conference. The media had never asked me one question in my life. So now I'm sitting up in front of a thing like, where have you been? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know why the coach put me in. But it went my way, and I think it's Jefferson or Lincoln. It says, the harder you work, the luckier you get. Again, it comes down to like these moments. It's all the moments before the moment, right? It's all the moments. Somebody asked me today, they said, there's another NBA team dealing with a player discipline issue. Player wants to be traded. They said, what do you do in that situation? I said, the sad thing is, I'm not sure what anybody can do when it gets to that point. So people ask me, and I'll get to this later, how did we sign Kevin Durant? He's a really good player. Why did he go to the Warriors? It's the things we did years before. It's not what we said in a 1-hour meeting in the Hamptons. It's the moments that we had 5 years before that lead to you don't go into a meeting and close a business deal because you just said some wonderful words that day, right? It's because you came with a reputation, your company came with a reputation, and you were confident, and they knew who you were when you walked in the room, and in some ways, you moved the needle 5%. It's rare that we move the needle 100%. They don't like us, they don't know who we are, we come in, boom, we sweep them off their feet. That's very rare. So my point is, for me, in that moment at UCLA, it was everything I'd done prior to that in the face of not a lot of encouragement, right? Not a lot of like, you can do it, you're on your way. It was more of an inner thing. Like this is, I believe in myself, and I don't know where that came from, and that's why I'd like to impart it to my kids and other people. But from there, I played in all the games because the coach had confidence in me. And by the time I was a senior, I started 5 or 6 games. So it would have been a lot easier to, never tried, right? And my life would have been completely different, because from UCLA, I met a guy, my head coach introduced me to a guy who was a sports agent who had some UCLA players, but he represented them. They were actually NBA players. But I went to work for him, and through him, I met a guy named Danny Ainge. And Danny Ainge he's the general manager of the Boston Celtics. He played in the NBA. And because of my work as an agent interacting with Danny when he was the Boston GM, when Joe Lacob bought the Warriors, I asked him, I said, can I meet the new Warriors owner? Because I grew up here, and the Warriors I work for them, but it's actually not ideal because they're my favorite team, which you think would be great. But I don't get to enjoy this as much as I would if I was just a fan. I got to go, one of our owners is part owner of the Dodgers. So I went to the World Series game last night. And I was so happy because I didn't care so much. I mean, I didn't care. I wanted to see the baseball game. When we play in the NBA Finals, it's like the equivalent of you guys, I don't know how much money we all have differently. It'd be the equivalent of you betting $200,000 on the game. Whatever makes you really uncomfortable, whatever number that is, that's how I feel when we play in the NBA Finals. I mean, it's not because money's riding on it, it's because years of work is riding on that outcome. And so for me to go last night was fantastic. So in any event, I think that as we kind of go through these things and we experience our life, it's important to kind of understand that what it took to get to that place. So when I called Joe Lacob, through Danny Ainge, I said, can I meet with you? And he said, for what? And I said, I'm a Warriors fan. I'd love to just meet with you and talk to you. So I went there and I talked to him, and we ended up talking for a little while. And he said, well, what could you even do for the Warriors? And I said, I worked as an agent. I played basketball. I just love the Warriors. I mean, I think I can help you. And I left the meeting thinking, and I'm not underselling this stuff. Like when I say these things, like I wasn't some really good basketball player and I'm downplaying it. I wasn't like, oh, UCLA really wanted me and they called me. Everything I'm saying is authentic. So when I left talking to Joe Lacob, who's our owner, I got in the car with my dad and he said, how'd it go? I said, that's not happening. And he said, maybe I have a confidence issue. And then he says, why not? I said, we just talked about like, I don't even know what I can do. I don't even know what he's looking for. But 3 months later, he called and he said, when we met, were you serious about helping me? I said, yeah, I mean, I was. And he said, well, what can you do? What can you do? I said, I don't know. I mean, let's talk about it. I said, I've got a bunch of NBA clients, so I can't have this be public like that I'm leaving them. So maybe let's take a day to see if we can make it work. And I've asked him since then, 7 years ago. It was 2010. So 7 years ago, I said, why did you even call me back? You know, he bought the Warriors for the most expensive price in the history of the NBA. He bought them for $450 million. He could have hired anybody that had done the job before. He could have easily done that. It's probably what I would have done. But he hired a guy that had never done it. And by the way, we've hired 2 coaches that have never coached. We hired Mark Jackson, never coached anything. Steve Kerr, never coached anything, ever. Not high school, not college, not NBA, not assistant, no level of experience. So that tells you something too about our ownership and how they envision things, and even me. And that's the important part about people, right? We're hiring people. Yes, experience matters for sure. I think experience matters a lot. But as we go through our life, we meet people, we talk to people, and we get a sense of who they are. Two good stories. So you talk about what makes a company, and this is bleeding into the Warriors. So I've been with the Warriors for 6 or 7 years. When I got there, we were not you guys. I don't know how many people are in your category, but if there were 30 and you were 1, the Warriors were 25 to 30 every year. And we had a couple upticks, but no exaggeration, if someone said the Warriors are going to win 2 championships in 2015 and 17, I think either the reaction would have been laughter or disgust, like, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, nobody would think that. Nobody would think that. I wouldn't think that. When our owner bought the team, 2010, I wasn't working for the team because he had the team for a year. One of the first things he said was, he looked at a banner up in our arena, and it's 1975 was the last time we'd won a championship, and he said, see that banner up there? That's a lonely banner. We need to get more of those. And I watched that happen on TV, and me, Warriors fan, I said, what is this guy talking about? Like, we don't win championships at the Warriors. And I said, that's crazy. But I need people like that around. You can sense my personality. I need people like that around me. So it's also identifying people that you need, leaders that you need, like a team. Steph Curry shoots the ball great. Without a guy like Draymond Green, who does all the tiny little things on our team, Steph Curry doesn't win a championship. Without the stuff that Klay Thompson does to guard the other team's best offensive player on the perimeter, we don't win a championship. So it's not like your company. You don't have people of the same temperament, same skills, right? You have leadership that hopefully complements each other. That's what we try to do when we build a team. So when Steve took the job, when you talk about leadership in a company, this is where I think this story probably exemplifies. There's two stories that I think are my favorite. We had signed a guy named Andre Iguodala, and he had made a lot of money, $100 million in his career, all-star, Olympic gold medalist. We had a chance to sign him, and it was a pretty transformative thing for us. We had built a decent team, but we had never attracted a free agent. Nobody had ever raised their hand and said, I want to go play there. A player that could go play probably wherever they wanted to. A free agent, they call him, in demand. So it was a big moment for us. So we signed this guy, and he came. And the first year he was with us, he started, which he should have started. The starters are your 5 best players. He was clearly he was probably one of our 3 best players. So we ended up losing in the first round of the playoffs. We had some injuries, whatever, we lost. So the next year we hired a new coach, Steve Kerr. So Steve called me and he said, what do you think about bringing Andre Iguodala off the bench? And I thought, I don't know. I mean, why are we doing? I mean, he's one of our better players. I mean, he's clearly one of our 5 best players. And he said, if we bring him off the bench, I think it makes us better as a team. And it'll make the guy in front of him better, the guy named Harrison Barnes. He's better starting than Andre is starting, so we need to do this. And just so you know, that's the equivalent of whatever your position is in your company. It's the equivalent of the CEO or owner saying to you, look, I know you're the VP, and you deserve it, and you're great, but we're going to knock you down to the director level. And it's going to be on SportsCenter tonight. I'm sorry, like, people are going to find out, And your friends are going to say, "What the hell's going on?" And every time you get in front of a microphone, they're going to ask you. Not only they're going to do this. Hey, Andre, how do you feel about not starting? Shouldn't you be starting? Aren't you one of the best 5 players? I mean, you're an all-star. What's going on? You're going to get asked that, and then after you answer that, which he did in a very humble and professional way, hey, you know what? This is best for the team. I'm trying to win a championship. This is what coach says, this is what I'm doing. Then the guy's going to turn off his microphone and go, all right, seriously, come on. Like, this is bullshit. You got to be starting. And then Andre's going to have to go in that moment. He's going to have to say, it's the best for the team. Like, yeah, sure, I'd love to start, but this is what the coach is saying. This is what we're doing. And he's going to go home to his family and friends, and they're going to say, why aren't you starting? And he's going to say, this is what's best for the team. Well, aren't you one of the best players? Well, I mean, yeah, but this is what's best for the team. Fast forward, 2015, we're in Cleveland. We're down 2-1 in the NBA Finals. We haven't won a championship in 40 years. Steve Kerr at the team breakfast that day All year long, we've brought Andre Iguodala off the bench. All year long, for 80, 92 games, whatever. He says to me, I'm thinking about starting Andre. And I was thinking, oh man, okay. Like, it's a big change after having played the whole season and been pretty successful without him. And now, not only does he say that, he says, I'm thinking about starting him for Bogut. And I was thinking, who's going to play center? And he said, well, Draymond. I'm taller than Draymond Green. That's not great that he's our center in the NBA Finals. But more importantly, I said, you think that'll work? And he goes, yeah, I think this will, we need to get going. We lose this game, we're probably done. We need to get going. And I said, all right, yeah, I'm with you. Like, that's what you want to do it. So we start Andre in Cleveland, game 4. We start the game down 8-0. And I forgot to say, when I asked him, where did you come up with this? He says, Nick Uren told me to do it. It was a good idea, Nick Uren. I said, Nick's like the video guy. And this is what's the best thing about Steve. He goes, I know. He's like, it's a good idea. And I said, all right, it's only the NBA Finals. And so we started the game down 8-0. And, you can see it, people questioning it, or you can, I'm going, what are we doing? We end up winning the game. We end up winning the finals, but we end up winning that game. And in the press conference, there's more people than this in an NBA final. There's hundreds of people, and you're sitting up there with a microphone in front of you, and they're asking you questions. It's international, it's domestic. And they said, Steve, what about the Iguodala? What about starting him? And he says, yeah, that was Nick Uren gave me that idea. And you can see all the media going, what? They're like flipping through their media guide, and he's not in there. How do you spell that? It's U-R-E. And yeah, Nick, who's he? And Steve says, yeah, he came up with that, and we decided we talked about it. It was a good idea. And here's the story, right? This is the better story, the best part of the story. Let's say we had lost. Let's say we'd lost. He would have never mentioned Nick Uren's name. You'd have never heard it. They said, Coach, what about starting Iguodala? He would have said, yeah, you know what? I thought about it, and for me, that was just a gut call, or that was what I thought was right, and I went with it. When things are bad, it's I screwed up. I take the blame. I should have been better. When it's a good thing, as a leader, you praise others. You give credit. You don't say, many people would have said, many people in that moment, most people would have said, yeah, you know what? I thought about it. Some people were against me, but I thought it was the right thing to do to start Iguodala. I knew I'd take some flack if we lost, but it ended up working out. That's probably a more stock answer from a head coach. But in that moment, what we don't realize as leaders or anybody in the company, there's transcendent moments where you set your culture. People talk about culture. Like, what is culture? It's people. Who are your clients? They're human beings. Who are your customers? They're people. When you go into a meeting, it's with other people. So when you talk about why people like your product or don't, it's because of you. It's because of how you relate to them. It's the same as our team. And we embody it probably more because we deal in human being, that's what it is, what makes us succeed or fail directly. It's not technology. We can talk about analytics, and if you guys have questions about that, we employ analytics, but it's really the people in our organization. And when you talk about people, I think what we sometimes miss is, who are the best people? Who are the best people to have in an organization? To me, it's the ones that are the best when things are the worst, right? Like when adversity comes in your life, whether it's personal or professional, when adversity, our best friends are probably the ones that showed up when things were the worst. Those are our friends, really. We could talk about acquaintances, we can talk about whatever we want. When things are bad, when you got fired, when something happened to you, when something happened to your family, who called you, who showed up? That's who people are. It's not who they are when something awesome happened. That's good too. But it's when things are bad, who are you? So when I try to build our team and we try to construct a roster, I don't want to know who's going to be the best at celebrating. I want to know who's going to turn tail when things are bad. So we lost. We lost the following year after we won it, 2016. We won 73 games, most games in the history of the league in the regular season. We lost the NBA Finals. We were up 3-1. All we had to do was win one more game. 2 of them were at home. And we lost. And it's considered like the most catastrophic loss in the history of professional sports. Like, we were supposed to win. We were favored. Like I said, we won more games in the history of the entire league. Everybody was just like waltzing us to the championship. So we lost. So I was driving home that night. It was a Sunday. And when our season is over, I meet with all the players. And I say, talk to them about the season, about whatever. And I remember driving home going, tomorrow's going to be interesting because I'm going to find out who we are as a team. Because it's just me and them. You know, it's the debriefing after you went into a meeting that was the biggest meeting of the year, and there was 5 or 10 of you, and I get to meet with each of you, and you get to say whatever you want. And so I'm going to find out who's going to blame someone else. I'm going to find out who thinks they screwed up, what they could have done differently. I'm going to find out all of it because people want to talk, especially in an environment like where it's very, very raw when you just lose in that capacity. So I remember thinking that this is going to be interesting because one of our best players had been suspended for one of the games. So I wanted to see, are they going to blame him? Steph Curry had come off an injury in the playoffs, and in his own words, he said he could have played better. Are they going to blame Steph? Are they going to blame Clay? He could have shot better. He's a better shooter. Who are they going to blame? Are they going to blame the coach? They're going to blame me. I don't know. Blame their wife. I don't know who they're going to blame. But they're going to blame somebody. I wanted to know. As far as evaluating people, that's the best time. So I sat there, and I remember sitting, and I remember sitting across from Steph and Draymond and all these guys, and I've never been so proud to be part of something because no one did any of that. No one said, well, you know what, if Draymond would have played, I can't help he got suspended. If he would have just kept his brain, you know, we would have won. Draymond didn't say, you know, if Steph would have shot better, what do you want me to do? Yeah, I got suspended, but come on, we had chances. Nobody said any of that stuff. And in that moment, like I talked about at UCLA, when you see how someone loses, you can also project how they'll win. And so I got to see that. And then everybody was talking about Kevin Durant. So I got to ask Steph, in our sport, in our business, there's a thought of fame, celebrity, money should take place over winning. Averaging more points is better than winning. Getting more shoe deals is better than winning. There's a narrative that's driven that way. It's true. We even unconsciously celebrate, like, that guy hit a ton of home runs. Well, his team didn't make the playoffs. Like, so what do we? But there's a big part of our culture that says, hey, who cares? He's great. The team sucks. Who cares? But I asked Steph, I said, if we get a chance to meet with Kevin Durant, do you want to go? Now, he's a smart guy. He knows that will take some of his shine or spotlight away. Because that's like saying to Bono or somebody, like, do you want to, share the stage with Paul McCartney? I mean, you know what's coming. Like, this is 2 lead singers in a band. Some people would say, no, that's my deal. Yeah, this guy's a great singer, but I want a drummer, I want a bass, and I want a guitar. I'm singing this for this band. But Steph, and this is why you could never have these conversations via the phone, email, text message. So here's why text message, forget about email. You'd never do this via email. Text message, hey, Steph, if we get a meeting with Durant, do you want to do it? Will you show up? So let's say he says, sure. I don't know if he did that like this. Bob wants me to meet with Durant. Are you kidding me? Sure, whatever. Types it, puts it in his pocket. Or if it's, sure, yes, we might get a meeting with Durant. This is why these things need to be done. I don't know, so I sat with him. And in person, we do the same thing. Hey, Steph, if we get a meeting, so he could have done this. He could have done the same thing. Yeah, man, if you want to. Yeah, I'll go. I mean, do you want me to go? Do I have to go? When are you going? Yeah, I don't know. Let me know when it's closer. He could have said, look, man, I don't know. Let me think about it. The body language, right, would tell me all I needed to know. And that was whatever his body language was going to determine whether we were going to take that meeting or not. But this was his body language. Looked at me and goes, yeah, I want to meet with him. I'll go. That's how you find out. One, I found out who he is. I didn't think he was anybody else, but now I know who I don't ever have to question who he is. And I found out the answer to the question. Do we want to change our team? And there's a great commencement speech that my brother sent me to by John Roberts. And it's relevant here because it talks about what do we do with adversity, right? Like, who are we when adversity strikes? And I think that's the lesson as far as how do we succeed in life? Like, how do we overcome? How do we be great all the time? It's who are we when things are the worst? So this is what John, I think this guy's brilliant. But anyways, he says, he was speaking at a commencement speech to graduates of college. He said, now the commencement speakers will typically also wish you good luck and extend good wishes to you. I will not do that, and I'll tell you why. From time to time in the years to come, I hope you will be treated unfairly so that you will come to know the value of justice. I hope that you will suffer betrayal because that will teach you the importance of loyalty. Sorry to say, but I hope you'll be lonely from time to time so that you don't take friends for granted. I wish you bad luck, again, from time to time, so that you will become conscious of the role of chance in life and understand that your success is not completely deserved and that the failure of others is not completely deserved either. And when you lose, as you will from time to time, I hope every now and then your opponent will gloat over your failure. It is a way for you to understand the importance of sportsmanship. I hope you'll be ignored so you know the importance of listening to others, and I hope you'll have just enough pain to learn compassion. Whether I wish these things or not, they're going to happen. And whether you benefit from them or not will depend upon your ability to see the message in your misfortunes. So the point is, maybe bad things have happened in your life, and maybe they're bad in personal ways, maybe they're professionally bad. It's, in a way, they're going to happen, which he's right. They've either happened to you or they're going to happen. They've happened to me. And we get a choice to how we react. It doesn't mean if something terrible happens, you don't grieve, you don't suffer. I got the phone call, I hope none of you have ever had this, but it was midnight, and my wife's phone rang, and she woke me up, and there was her father on the line telling us on speaker that her brother had died. He was 33 years old, tragically, out of nowhere. And it's sad to me that for me, empathy was not a strong suit of mine. It took that, right? It took that for me to, if anything's happened to you, to really understand, like, if you've suffered loss, deep loss, that's what it took for me to understand where you're coming from. If that didn't happen to me, I would have no clue, right? So this message is, as we go through this whole thing we go through professionally, personally, it's great things are going to happen. Great things have happened to you guys. You're here. It's awesome. You work for a great company. Really, really hard things are going to happen. Both are going to happen. It's easy to be great when things are great. For us at the Warriors right now, they're great. Who are we, who am I, when things are not? Who's your company? Maybe you're here. What if you drop down? The message is it's fine, right? Because give me any quality group of people, and we can handle anything. Give me a quality family, and we'll persevere. Give me a family that's not quality, and they will not make it. Give me a group of people, give me a team that faces the longest odds but is together and is high character. I'll bet on that team all day long. I've said it all the time. I said, my teams have won, lost. I say it like I'll lose with those guys any day. I'll happily lose with those people. I'd rather lose with those people than win with those people, because that winning is BS. That's not going to last, because I know who those people are. So for us at the Warriors, and I'm happy to answer specific questions, for me, how you build something like your company, how you build a culture, it's people, it's defining people, it's humility, it's leadership, it's all those things. And I think with all that, one, it's more fun. It's a lot more fun to succeed with people. It's even more fun to fail with people than by yourself. That's why team sports, that's why you see Michael Phelps, when he wins a relay race, he goes crazy. When he wins a race by himself, he's like, yes, yes. When the relay wins, he's jumping up and down. Same thing as the Ryder Cup. They go insane in golf. Davis Cup in tennis. All protocols out the window, all decorum. They're screaming around like little kids. There's nothing like team sports. And you guys work with teams. That's why it's more fun. But there's a responsibility to being on a team. There's highs, there's lows. And I think and I don't sit here telling you, like, this is how you need to be, or I only sit here telling you, like, my story, which I think has a lot of lessons in it. that I wish I had heard, so I could have at least walked through it a little differently. And I'm still, as you guys know, the older we get, I'm the less sure every day the older I get, because things happen and you go, wow, I thought I knew what that was about, but I have no clue. So as we go through it, I think we go through it with some of these thoughts. I think it can be really helpful. And again, I mean, you guys are in a position of success. And I told our team, I spoke to our employees, and I said, we're the house in the neighborhood where everybody wants to hate us now. So we have to be nicer. Like we're the house on the hill where they say they got everything. So they're looking for reasons. That's why I told Steph Curry, you can't throw your mouthpiece at the referee. Like that's not who you are. That's not, you got kids at home. Like what are you gonna tell? He told me today, I said, what'd you say to Riley? And he said, oh, when I got home, she had a huge temper tantrum, like about something else. And I said, well, wait, I go, what are you gonna say? Like daddy had one too? Like that? He said, I had to pay $50,000. And I said, yes. But in any event, that's my story. That's our story. Thank you guys for listening. And I'm happy to answer whatever questions you want. So thank you. I don't know how. Yeah, sure.
Do you remember the guy's name that told you to play basketball?
Oh, yeah, Steve Lavin. Yeah. I should probably say that, but yeah. You know him?
No.
Yeah.
I found him to be
Yeah. Yeah. And he ended up being my head coach. He started off in that position, and then by the time I was a senior, he was my head coach. So he kind of rose through. So, yeah. Yes?
Question. So you mentioned that at the end of the year when you guys lost, you knew the next year you were going to win it, right?
Yeah.
So what did you think at the end of last year when you got in again this year?
That's a good, I got asked that because I told our coaches, prior to last year, there was a coaches retreat. And I said that. And we had some new coaches. I said, I think we're going to win the championship this year. I didn't say it publicly. I said it privately. And some of them looked at me like, that's a lot of pressure. And I said, I've only ever said it one other time in my life. I'm just saying what I feel. I didn't say it this year. And some of them asked me, why didn't you say it? I said, because I don't know. I don't know how to answer. I don't know. The answer is I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes in life we kind of know. It doesn't mean we're not, but I don't know it like I knew it before. I don't know if that makes sense.
So you always said you were never good in basketball, and you have all these people around you say, what are you doing? What are you doing? Was it your inner will, or you were talking to yourself that when you kept going, or was it just for fun?
Well, I'm pretty driven, like as far as just, I think if we really enjoy a pursuit, for you, there's some pursuit you have, right? Or whatever it is, I don't know what it is. And I think if we can like chase that, it doesn't feel hard. Even though there might be people around us that are saying, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? For me, it felt right to kind of pursue this, even knowing that, probably believing it wasn't going to end well. I guess for me, the only thing we can do, you don't get a deal, you don't get promoted. The only way I can live with myself is to say, I did everything I could. Like if you fail an exam, you can fail, I can fail, but if I can fail and say, I studied my ass off, like I did every single thing I could, I still failed. When I took the bar exam, and the bar exam is a disaster, for those of you that are lawyers, it's a disaster, it's so hard. My objective was, whether I fail or pass, I'm not gonna say I should have studied more. That is not gonna be, I'm not gonna walk out of that room and say I should have studied more. I'm gonna say I failed or passed, I'm gonna say I did the best I could. That's all I'm gonna do. And I passed, which didn't want to take it again. But I think that's what it was. I think it was, yeah, it was mine. And I think the lesson, as I look back on like things I would have done differently, I think who we surround ourselves with is so important. And Jim Rohn, not Rome, said that you're the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. Like that sounds cliche, whatever. If you take, like for me, playing at UCLA, I didn't belong there, but I was playing with the best players in the country, so I got better. Yeah, they made me better. Like I can't, if you took the 5 smartest people and you said, I'm gonna hang out with these people for a year, you don't think you're gonna get smarter? Or if you take 5 idiots and you hang out with them, you're gonna get dumber. You know, like you're gonna go, I'm learning it. I can't even talk the same. You know, I'm getting stupider every day. So I think that's our choice. We get to decide who we hang out with. I don't think we do a great job of it. I don't think we do. I think we get to choose who our friends are. We get to decide. And there's a lot of great people running around. But I kind of like wish I had a kind of somebody that I could have been. And like I said, my parents weren't anything probably much different. And maybe you guys had the parents that were like, go get them. You can do it. Mine were good in the way they're like, do what you want to do. It's your life. Not in the callous way, not like, I don't care what you do. But it was, you can play. If you want to play, go play. That may be the ownership part, whereas I think now I see, I'm a young parent, but like our kids, sad story, but like you take Tiger Woods and you go, here's people that, so I'm around professional athletes all the time, right? The best, they make the most money, they're the most famous, whatever. So you go, I'm gonna make my kid be one of them. I'm gonna make my kid be famous. Like I'm gonna push him in that direction. And I don't know really what Tiger Woods, who he is or whatever he is, but if you wanna look at a case study and somebody that was told you're gonna do this, and he was the best. He was the best at his, maybe one of the best ever. But I'm not sure it was his dream. And then when you get to the situation and you unravel, like you go, who am I? What am I even doing this for? So I think if we can impart like, it's your, not in a mean way, but like it's your life. If you want to be an artist, if you want to do this, you go do it. Be respectful of other people, work hard. That's a strong drive in us, I think, like really strong. But it takes, as a parent, not standing over going, you know, or not going up to the coach. That's why the Iguodala story is so good for parents that have kids that aren't starting on their 5th grade team. Tell them that story. You know, I didn't start on any of my, I started 1 year of high school, my senior year, when pretty much every senior, 1 year. I played at UCLA. Like, that doesn't make sense. But it's because I didn't make that the reason. I'm not starting, I'm not playing. Or when I had a problem with my coach, I came home and said, this guy's tough. My dad said, go talk to him. How many parents now go, you go talk to the coach? No. They go, I got this, son. I'll handle this. Or that's what we miss. So if I'm raised maybe differently, and I should give my parents credit, then I can't make that. If I don't have them kind of looking out for me, then maybe I don't make it. Yes.
I know you've got
Yeah.
a hard stop.
Yeah.
You've got to be on the radios.
Yeah.
We have about 5.
I'll take like 1 or 2. I can talk and walk. Yeah, 2 more. I'll do 2 more. Sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Which championship is more meaningful to you personally, and your take on Jordan Bell's dunk the other night?
I talked to him about that today. The first championship is like this is a stupid example, but it's the only one I can come up with. It's like your first kid. There's never one that can replace your first child. Like it's not that you don't love, it's just that moment, the first time you do it, it's like I said, for me, it was like, and I didn't expect it either. I didn't think we were going to win. Jordan Bell, if you don't know, he did some at the end of our game where he threw the ball off the backboard and dunked it. It's generational. Like, as I go through this, what my generation, yours, our 20-year-olds, we don't view things the same way. So we talk about, I don't understand why kids are texting. Well, you know what? You don't really need to, it's happening, right? So now what are we doing about it, right? Like, it's not for us to understand or not. It's going. We're not stopping that train. That stuff's the station. So I had to talk with him about there's going to be a segment that doesn't like that. There's going to be a segment that really likes it. You just got to understand that. And so he understood that. Yeah, sorry, this is a lot, yeah.
So I'm reading Wooden, A Lifetime of Observations. Did you get a chance to meet Coach Wooden, and do you have any notable stories about him?
Yeah, I did. He came around UCLA. My favorite stories of him were not anything, I think Maya Angelou says she says this, she says, people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they won't forget how you made them feel. That's what I remember about him. For someone of his stature to be as humble as he was, we sat there at lunch one time, and he listened, and he wasn't arrogant, and he taught more than, he called himself a teacher more than a coach. And he was deep. like a deep person, like real deep, like not, when I say deep, I don't mean philosophical, but a very grounded, like, I know what's right, and I know what's like, it's my family, it's my wife, it's right and wrong, and I know what it is, and you could feel him be centered in all that. Whereas it's hard to meet people like that. We're all kind of like twisting in the wind, so I remember a peacefulness about him. And obviously you can read, you know what he did. I know what he did too, but I think he did it because more of that than the pyramid and all that stuff. Sorry I don't have more time, guys, but I gotta do this other thing, so thank you very much. Yeah.